Hello everybody, Glass Half Dead here. You're about to watch a very good video, I'm sure. However, I just wanted to let everybody know, kind of a bit of pre-hype, before the hype truly begins, that the London Grand Tournament is for 40k, big 40k this is, the largest tournament in all of Europe, second largest in the world. It takes place June 27th and 28th of 2020, I believe. And this year, for the first year, it's going to be holding a Kill Team Event 2. The reason I'm hyping this up is because I'm the one that's going to be holding it. Now, obviously, it's not an official Glass Half Dead tournament. However, it is in all but name because I'm the one making the rules pack. I'm the one hosting it. I may also, if things pan out well, be streaming it, hopefully live to all of you. If you want to know more information, hang around. My YouTube channel, my Discord, my Patreon will be the best places to hear news first. Anyway, enjoy the video. Hello everybody, it's Glass Half Dead here, and today with me I have Michael T. Holy. I don't exactly know why I have to pronounce his entire name, but Michael, do you want to say hello?
Well, that's I put that out there, right? That's the brand, Michael
Exactly.
T. Holy.
Yeah.
I love it, man. Reese does it. You're doing it.
I know. For some reason, yeah. I just have to say the whole thing now. I feel like Michael isn't enough,
Right.
So I just got to go whole hog. So anyway, this is, I believe, number 2 in my covering of the SoCal Open, and the interviewing of winners and spiritual winners, of everybody there. Obviously, you came first in day 1 and you came second in day 2. Day 1 being arena, day 2 being open. You've played Asuryani before, so for those of you unaware, you came first in day 1 with Asuryani.
Right.
You then came a strong second, shall we say, in day 2 with Astartes. And that's mainly what we're going to be talking about here, because of course, nobody had done anything with Astartes, really. I mean, I don't think they'd even been like the top half of any large tournament. And we did have a chat last time you were on about you had been playing with Astartes, but you found you just couldn't beat Tau, I recall.
Right.
So whether or not you've pushed past that, or who knows. But before we go into the games themselves, which of course we will do, because it's always interesting to see, suddenly, as a more elite team, it's interesting to know how you were playing secondaries, whether you're going positional, a mix, or kill. But we'll get into that. But first, do you want to just kind of break down your thoughts on Astartes in general? Because I have my own thoughts. They're a faction I've played since Elites, but never in a tournament, obviously. And I know that a lot of people do play Astartes. So, how do we win tournaments
with Astartes? Well, the first thing I'll say is that, plugging, we were talking about just a second ago, this Goonhammer website, which new to me. My phone sent me an article by November Mike, who's on the Discord, and he talked about Astartes and how to, kind of give an overview of them. And I was kind of reading it, and, it had a lot of concepts I've seen, I think, because he talks about them a lot in the Astartes channel.
Sure.
But I was like, okay, yeah, I kind of heard that before. And then he like put up my list from the thing, and he's like, hey, here's the list and whatnot. And I was like, oh, wow. And he made the observation of my list that I went with lower cost models ish. And I went with mobility because they're white scars. And then, I picked guys who had assault weapons and stuff like that. And so, and I think he derived the kind of reasonable conclusion that maybe that's the way to win with Astartes. And what my thought was when I saw that was, we have to remember what I'm good at playing is Asuryani. And so naturally enough, I tried to make my Astartes as much like Asuryani as I could, because that's what I'm good at, and that's kind of how I know how to play. And you mentioned I had the roadblock with Tau, where I was playing, I think, kind of a shootier, more static Salamanders list, and that and the way I figured out to beat Tau was by going to the White Scar, and I ended up playing a pretty good Tau opponent and getting the win. So I think it was proof of concept that it can be done at least. But I don't think that's the only way to win with Astartes. And I'll tell you, as far as factions go, I mean, Astartes, they don't get that much more hoardy and mobile than what I did. And I definitely toyed with the idea of having more scouts and, and you could do that. Maybe you could get one more body out of it. And of course, it was a 125-point tournament, right? Which is what invited the whole idea of this at all. And after playing, as I was leading up to that tournament, I thought to myself, well, I put a lot of work into painting this army and everything else, and I'm probably only going to use it once. But my experience in the tournament, and even some of the people I played in the tournament, have made me wonder if there are some other ways for Astartes to succeed, and maybe it's just a matter of kind of getting the reps in and having preparation against different kinds of factions. Because I wonder, especially with how we're changing doors, I think the whole community has agreed we're going to change doors now. That's helpful for more elite factions in general, and maybe for a faction, maybe if you're not moving as fast with your Astartes. So I think there's a lot to be done with them, and I think that a lot of models that weren't on my list maybe do have some viability. But ultimately, I did, I kind of started with the concept of I'm going to be White Scars. I want to be fast. So, and I want to make models who are going to I want to get 8 or 9 bodies, into my 125-point list. So I did everything from that perspective. And my list of guys who didn't make the cut is, you can't see them here, but they're lined up on my wall because, I had to model things and then build them and then experiment with them and then paint them and then I would be like, oh man, I have to cut this guy, and so then there he went onto the shelf of disappointment.
Well, that's a lot to unpack. Can I cut in here and say so? Okay.
Sure.
Firstly, I'm super interested to know what didn't make the cut, but we'll get to that in a sec. So,
right.
You kind of implied there that, in your opinion, Astartes is only viable at 125. Do you not think you could have done it at 100?
Well, I think I went into the tournament thinking that, but I'm not. I'm more worth. I think it's worth a look, and on top of that, I think maybe at BAO, maybe it's a little harder because there, you've got mixed arena and open, which is. That's more challenging for some armies, and so SoCal had 2 things going for it. One, I would know I was either playing arena or open, and second, I had 125 points. But the next thing will be LVO, and we don't even know what the format's going to be. But there's definitely a talk about making some changes to make elite factions more viable, as they see it, right?
Sure.
We've seen some elite factions do well, but I think the kill team, the Astartes kill team at 100 is going to be good. I don't know if they would have been good at BAO.
Okay.
I can say that much because that would have put a lot of stress onto the list to have to be able to alternate between arena and open and to be at 100 points. But I, for instance, I haven't played enough with the Nova missions to even know if I could say the same thing. Well, Nova, there was no death denied, so they weren't going to do it at Nova either. And they did do well at SoCal. They could have won if I played better. They could have won one of the days. Maybe they could have been good in the arena day too with a different list. I didn't have enough time to practice 2 different ways of playing. So I think my answer to your question, very roundabout, no at BAO, maybe at Nova, yes at SoCal, and I think yes at LVO, and there you go.
So despite what you originally said, you've kind of come around to the idea that perhaps Astartes could win at both 100 and 125 arena and open. They have the potential at almost everything that we are currently running. Obviously, they'd have more trouble at some. But...
Yeah. Arena might have challenges that I haven't run into yet, But I feel like it. I mean, I played with my Auxilary. I mean, I almost lost to an Astartes team in Arena. So I mean that kind of opened my eyes to like, wow, there's I mean, maybe there's some viability there that I hadn't given a chance to. I decided early in my testing that I liked open just a little better, and so then I stuck with that, right? But I didn't really give an arena enough of a test probably to fully write it off. And
was that at SoCal Open that you almost lost to an Astartes?
Yes. Cool. SoCal Open on the first day for first match.
Oh right, that would have been quite the shake-up if that had happened. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I think that Astartes, and particularly with what I'm seeing people talk about in terms of format changes, I mean, I think you're going to have a lot of different lists that are going to be viable, and Astartes has got the huge advantage of that incredible diversity and how you can build it out. So as long as you got to be purposeful. They're never a one size fits all. Bring your 7 guys. This is your roster. I remember a while back, Elliot said on your podcast that he thought the 20-man roster was a trap. I don't know if you remember, that was a long time ago.
I do, but, with Death Guard.
And the way he writes lists, where he kind of has like an overwhelming concept, and that's generally, if we kind of look at his Servants of the Abyss list, we can look at his Poxwalker spam list, we can look at his Plasma spam list, and then insofar as he's kind of working with Alex on the Alex Nova list, we can see that same concept all 4 times, where it's kind of we're going to do this one thing and we're going to kind of hammer it, and so I can see with that mentality how the roster doesn't serve a great purpose. But for my style of play, and particularly with the Astartes, man, that roster is huge. And, my Asuryani team, you can see kind of a core of guys who, particularly in the 125-point format, are in every game. And so you can say, well, okay, the roster is important, but it's just changing the outer shape of your list. But with the Astartes, it was, I definitely have rosters with no single unit in common with each other, So a massive transformation depending on who I'm playing. And that means you have to make the right decision when you see your opponent's roster about what you're bringing, which is a huge part of being good.
Okay. So that, I'm taking notes. That's what this pen is for. So, because I will forget, I will just forget what you said and I'll miss something because I have like 4 things I want to ask, but I can't just ask them all now. So, sub-factions. You went White Scars.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was entirely a joke when you said earlier that you tried to make Astartes as much like Asuryani as possible, but kind of dual question here. Do you think that certainly in the pack that we had, obviously going forward things might be different because we're changing up primaries possibly, but do you think that obviously movement is highly important, and in fact the faction that ended up besting you was Orcs with plus 2 inches to their movement for obvious reasons. Do you think that White Scars is the only viable Astartes faction because of the movement bonus, or do you think anything's possible?
I don't think it's the only viable one, but the most of the good Astartes things other than White Scars involve being like a little bit better at combat, right? And I think that's the Blood Angels, which certainly do seem attractive, particularly for a really scout heavy list. And then the guys who get +1 to hit, the Nordic guys.
The Space Wolves.
The Space Wolves. Yeah. And then, of course, the Salamanders. And you do have to remember with the salamanders, you don't get that complete reroll, right? You only get to roll pretty much the ones and the twos, so that does take the edge off of it. But all three of those are neat, but they just make you a little bit more lethal, and your team's pretty lethal overall, so it doesn't cover kind of your weakness. And I think that's what I was getting. I was having a tough time with, because then if you meet somebody who's kind of positioned against you and can outgun you, you're not in a good spot. And the thing about movement and then the extra bit of being able to follow people if they break away from charge, is that it gives you so much more flexibility within the game to do different things. And that is how I'm used to playing. That's something the Asuryani are really good at, right? Like they can start going one direction and then they can quickly turn about because they move, and there's all these little, you know what I mean? Like some factions, they'll start moving around one piece of terrain a certain way, and then if they had to go the other way, they wouldn't get it done in time, right? And the Auxilary can always do that, and they feint and things like that. And so I think the white scars bring a little bit of that. I mean, plus 2 inches. It sounds so trivial. The first time I heard it, thinking about it in Warhammer, it didn't seem like a big deal at all. But man, it really makes a difference. You think about that veteran move with an extra 2 inches is so much more reliable to get within charge range than if you don't have it. You think about those flamers getting into a really nice position. It's just so much more likely they're going to get to the spot that they need to. So I felt most comfortable with it, I think, because it was like the Asuryani playstyle, but I do think that there's going to be viability to the other ones. And I mean, although I haven't experimented at all, I love the idea of a lot of scouts with that Blood Angels ability, because that's in terms of like maximizing your killing power, that's probably the path to it. I mean, people don't get excited about weaker units, right? But I mean, like, it's about the number of dice you roll, right? You're going to get a lot of dice on the table with just knife scouts who are wounding on 3s, or 2s.
Yeah, no, I recently started building a Blood Angels roster, thinking
Yeah.
nobody has seen this on the board. Nobody has ever said Blood Angels are good in Kill Team. But now you have, so I will stop building that.
So I've ruined it. Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah.
Oh well.
You should have just told me beforehand, don't bring up Blood Angels no matter what.
Yeah. I'll just cut this first half hour. It's fine.
Yeah, there you go. Good.
Yeah. So okay. So I don't know if I want to ask this yet, because it could be a huge tangent, but because it's kind of being alluded to here. So what we were talking about a little bit earlier is that in SoCal Open, we were still playing the same primaries as the core book. If you hold one, essentially, if you hold one, you get 1 point. If you hold 2, you get another point. If you hold more than your opponent, you get another victory point. However, it seems like people are pretty excited to try out that, but in addition to that, also, if you kill one model from the enemy team, you get a victory point. If you kill more than your opponent kills, you get a victory point.
Yeah.
Will, you were kind of saying there that the Space Marines are already killy enough, and the reason you go White Scars is because they're killy enough. You need to fill in your weakness, not bolster your strength. Is that going to change? Obviously, I know you're a man of testing and data.
Yeah.
And possibly you haven't tested this new hold one, hold more, kill one, kill more scheme to the point that you would like. But do you think that will change what you do?
I don't know if it'll change. I mean, it's certainly going to change what I do. In other words, one Alex reveals what's going on at LVO. It's going to substantially impact what I choose to bring to LVO, right? And when Sisters of Battle, they've probably been released. Have they been released?
They've been released, but we're not getting official rules until January, it seems. And we assume that we're going to get the kill team in January as well. But we don't know.
Okay, so maybe not relevant for LVO. But I was going to say, that would be certainly something to look at too. But certainly we need to know the mission parameters first, and then I think, I might be building a new army again,
Sure.
right? Because you gotta think about. I mean, if you want, at least if you want to go and kind of like do the best you can to win, it's not just about bringing the faction you kind of have played a lot, right? You have to play to the mission, and the idea of bringing a few extra Storm Guardians might not. I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be a sensible one. I mean, I think that'd be a huge shift.
Oh, it would be massive. Yeah.
Yeah. That being said, we didn't really see a lot of hordes at SoCal, and so people talk about like that, like the horde meta, but I didn't see that at all.
Do you think that's possibly because people that play Kill Team, because it's still a very immature community, people are not, and there's no money on the line. People aren't trying their absolute hardest to, beat face, kill hobby, and just, I know this is the best list, so I will take it. That's kind of my view, but I have Well, I have nothing to back that up.
I think that might be. I mean, that's right to a certain extent. I mean, obviously, I brought Astartes for that reason, to show something different. I think that we see some of that, but on the other hand, I'm sure that Eric brought Tau, and he thought it was the best thing to win. And note that Chuck brought Tyranids, right, and not his Necrons or his Asuryani. So I think that I think those, there's more guys who are going to be out there getting competitive, and we're seeing more. You're going to get the best players when you get these groups of people who are good, who are playing against each other a lot.
Yeah.
And you got Chuck and Eric up there, and now, after SoCal, I've become aware of these, Luke and Alex and Emmanuel, right? And they're all in a community together. I think possibly with Biernid and Utsikal.
That's a worrying community, yeah. They're just going to come to another tournament.
If they're getting in a lot of games together, they're gonna get really good. And I don't know, and they probably have access to a lot of armies between them, right? So obviously, I think Emmanuel, seems like a pretty committed orc player, and they all have nicely painted armies, so they might not like the idea of changing, but I don't know. Of course, they're all playing factions that I think are pretty viable for the moment. But yeah, once you add the kill one, kill more, being an elite army is a powerful option if you're hard to kill.
Yes.
Right. You certainly can't discount Custodes in a kill one, kill more environment.
No, I agree, actually. That would be very
that's going to be a big, And the one thing I'll say, and of course we don't know, like you said, maybe not everybody's like maximizing it like they could, but we had a great diverse setup at SoCal.
Yeah.
You probably can't do any better than that. Like, you're not going to get more diversity than that at a tournament. When you pull on one lever, you're going to be inadvertently pulling on another, and so I'm interested to see what happens at LVO, and if we see really different results. I think it's certainly all the horde type lists, which includes like the sort of drone spam that's not trying to kill you that bad, they're going to suffer a lot, right? You don't want to be giving away kill more, right? You got to kind of protect the secondaries, and we'll see. But then if it's just hold one and hold more, I don't know. We'll have to see how it's written out, right? Because I think another thing that's interesting right now that is sort of not talked about enough is that the fact you can only score 9 points for your primaries is pretty important in balancing people who are good at holding objectives against people who aren't.
Yeah.
Because if you're playing well, like, just because you have a lot of units, you shouldn't just go out and hold a lot of things, because you don't need to hold a lot of things 4 times, right? You only need to hold a lot of things like maybe twice, and then 2 things once, and then 1 thing once, right? And so you kind of want to make sure you're going to get your secondaries, and you're going to make sure that you are killing critical units that are going to stop you from holding things. And I don't know how the hold one, kill one is going to affect that, right? Because now you need to hold more every turn, and that, I don't know. That it kind of goes both ways.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that the current format is going to be you have the possibility of scoring 4 on the primary every turn. And I believe it's
Right.
going up to 12 that you could possibly score. So you could max score every turn. 1, 2. Or
16, shouldn't it be?
no,
'Cause-
so similar to how you could max score 3 turns, you can max score 3 turns in this as well. But you have the
oh, okay.
potential to get 4. So you can do
Yeah.
everything. You can hold 1, hold more, kill 1, kill more 3 times. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it'd be an interesting, but I mean, I think there's got to be. I mean, certainly you see in big 40K that people avoid taking units that are super easy to kill because they don't want to give up killing one. And so, suddenly that Poxwalker list or whatnot is,
Yeah.
I think it's a different story, right? And um, especially because you already have a big disadvantage. I mean, bringing a horde list, you're really vulnerable to shaking most of the time.
Yes.
And I mean, that's the way you beat all these slightly bigger lists. So when you add to that the fact that you're getting less primaries, I think it's gonna really, it should take that out of the meta completely. Maybe more than we want to.
Yeah, it will definitely be interesting because we could, in one fell swoop, nerf swarms, hordes, and also make Custodes a very viable faction, which would
Yeah.
be very interesting. Yeah.
Well, and the problem is, I almost feel like once you make it hard for a lot of other things to be viable at the same time, you get that one, but then you lose several others. But yeah, it's a tough call. I mean, the Crute, man, we saw some good performance out of the Crute.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
definitely losing that, right? We're definitely losing that.
Yes. No, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah. Yeah.
So, man, I'd rather if I had to choose between Crute and Custodes, I'd pick Crute.
Custodes aren't exactly fun to play against. Yeah. Which is such a shame. They're a.
Right.
I hope I don't die. Because I know I'm not killing them. Yeah.
Right. Of course.
Okay.
Sort of painful and frustrating to try to, anyway.
Yes. Yeah. So, bit of a tangent there, and we might even come back to it about our thoughts in general. And but I suppose actually now, kind of relevant, secondaries. How did they
Yeah.
affect you at SoCal? What were you taking?
Well, I mean, all different things. We'd have to go. I mean, I think that I probably evince a little preference for bounty hunters, and then the Asuryani do like to scout the field. But it depends. I like the thing I really like about those missions that we used at SoCal is that they all limit the secondaries you can pick in different ways, right? So like they have a different feel, right? And I mean, the first one on the open board is going to be a big rumble in the center of the field, and then the second one has to be kind of a killy one. There's not a lot of the positional secondaries are harder to come by in that, and so on. And I like that. I like that each one has a different feel. And obviously, if you face the wrong guy on the wrong map, yeah, I mean that sucks. But it's interesting too, right?
Sure.
So
So just
I liked
on that
that.
note, very quickly. So one thing that is still up in the air, it seems, is whether they're going to have open secondaries or closed secondaries, I guess we can call it, where you have the list of 6 to pick from, or you can pick from all 18 or however many there are in the pack. You've obviously just said you prefer the closed secondaries. Can you think of a good rebuttal to someone saying they prefer the open secondaries? Because a conversation I often have with Birinid, in fact, and others, but him notably, is he much prefers open secondaries because of the exact thing you just said, that sometimes you just get a bad matchup and there's not much you can do about it. Do you have a proper rebuttal to that?
Well, I mean, there's always something you can do about it because, I mean, that's about your list building, right? I mean, you've got to have made a list that can kind of accommodate those different possibilities. And when you know what missions you're going into, and like, I'm not just thinking about, okay, how do my Astartes beat Grey Knights? I'm thinking about how do they beat Grey Knights on these 6 different maps, and kind of like looking at and then here's the one that seems to be the worst. So how do I handle that problem, right? And that's part of the preparation. And so I don't like the idea that just because one matchup is harder, and you might get that matchup or you might not, that means, I kind of like that. I think that's part of what makes it neat and fun. So that's my first part. And then I think the second part is that, Alex said after doing the open secondaries, is like, the same ones. And I know I didn't pick the same ones, but I do believe that most people probably did. And the reason is, you get handed this list, a roster that maybe you've never played against, and you're trying to figure out what the mission is and what the primaries are, and you're going to try to figure out what you're going to muster, and you just don't have time to do another thing. You know what I mean? And so people just sort of gravitate to, okay, these are my 3. I just always pick these 3. And that removes a little bit of, I don't know, tactical stuff from the game, I think. So those would be my 2 thoughts on it.
Okay. Another question in that case. So, as you said, the secondaries add a bit of flavour to the missions, right? As you said, the first one is, mission 1, you're in the centre, right? Whatever, or mission 2, actually there's no central objective and there's no domination, so you may as well be at the edges, something like that. One of the other things that they're considering doing for the competitive scene is rollable secondary pods. So you'll pick the mission, and then you roll a d12, whatever, d20, and you then pick, whichever one it randomly picks is a balanced pod of 6 secondaries.
Right.
Do you like that idea? Because it kind of doesn't, you won't be able to, well, I suppose there are too many permutations to actually test
you won't be
at that point.
Right. You can't test it all the way. You're just going to have to, but they're balanced, so there's not as much
Hopefully, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
That would be my thought on it. So, I think that's a nice solution. The one downside to the sort of 6 that each have their own built-in is that, you do kind of get to know them, and then maybe they become stale, right? So that's going to kind of give you the
longevity.
Yeah, and what Nova had, what was their missions called? Whatever the Nova missions were, where you had sort of an infinitely random mission setup. It's going to give you that without the problem of, truly Nova random.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I thought.
I really liked. Yeah.
I thought that you might have said that actually you liked to know that mission 1 is the center. That's where you learn the map, you learn the deployment, you learn the secondaries, and you know exactly what you're doing. But no, you're okay with that mix-up.
Oh yeah. I do like learning the maps, and it is kind of fun. But I think the other thing will be fun in a different way. So.
Okay. Awesome. So yeah, we went off on a huge tournament-based tangent there. If I could pull myself back, because I'm the one asking the damn questions, let's talk about Space Marines.
Space Marines.
Yeah, they're a thing.
Never. What's a Space Marine? I don't even know what a Space Marine is.
We only speak High Gothic here, right?
Right.
So I want to talk about your roster, but we've already done the sub factions, haven't we? You think that Blood Angels have legs?
Yeah.
Which I've cut out from the interview, but we know that. Do you want to give us, or if you can, because obviously, I said this before the interview started, but there are so many things you can do with the Astartes. They have such a huge roster. Were there some units, and I believe there were, that you took in every single list, and you consider them the core of your list that you want to talk about?
Well, I only had one leader on my list, so yes, I took him every time. He was a scout leader
with a bolt gun,
and and he's a pretty good unit. He attacks twice, he shoots twice, and he doesn't cost that much, and he kind of gives you that starting bit of affordability to build your list out. There's always somebody who needs to stand in the back. for some reason or other. So that was that was probably the only thing that got you time. I think the flamers are pretty favored. They find their way into a lot of lists. It's nice with the white scars to you can advance, move the extra 2, and still flame. So those are good. And I kept thinking as I was making this list that I was going to hit on like a favorite type, and then just make like 20 of those. You know what I mean? Whatever. There's going to be a lot of those guys that were going to get spammed, but the flamer was as close as it got, and there were only 2 of them, right? And that's as many as ever came onto a list. And I just found that, you needed that diversity. I'll tell you, my very first model I think I planned was a guy with a lightning claw and a grav pistol. It's 15 points. And I'm like, oh man, this guy's great. Like he's got this great hand-to-hand weapon. He's got a nice little pistol, dangerous all over the place. And he did make the cut, but there's one of him, and he barely ever got to play. So it just goes to show that what you think is going to be good is not always how it plays out. Looking at the list, another guy who makes it almost every time is my comms, and then as it turned out, my heavy bolter scout. In the 5 games I actually played, I think he might have. He was in 4 of them at least, and he was instrumental in every game he played. He was a huge difference maker, and I think it's just got to do with the fact that he's got 18-inch for short range, right? Yeah. And then he's got the comms and the auspex next to him, kind of. So he's hitting on 2s. A lot of the time he's hitting on 2s. And he's demo spec, so he's wounding almost everything on 2s. And he's AP -1, which is, you get the most efficiency out of your AP with that first point. So for a 14-point model, those 3 attacks, hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s, AP -1, even if you're shooting at things with an invuln save, you don't feel like it was a wasted shot. You know what I mean? He's got so much versatility. I would say he was probably the all-star of the tournament for me. And an unexpected situation, but he has the 2 specialists are contributing to make that all happen. Other than that, man, it changes up a lot. It changes up a lot. And honestly, I have, for my Asuryani with 125, I only had 5 lists compared to I think 13 at BAO. Right, because you lose so much flexibility at 125 for them. But for the Astartes, I had 15 lists that came out of my roster, depending on who I was facing. And when I got home, I could see that I needed more because I was challenged. When I faced Admech, for example, I didn't know what it was going to be like, and so I almost need to kind of think of a slightly different list just for them, accounting for the fact that I don't know if I'm going to see priests or plasma or a combination. And so when I see that roster, I need to have kind of, okay, well, this is going to be my play, as opposed to me sitting there and guessing in the moment, is he going to bring more of this or more of that, which is fine, but probably it leads you to making, I think, maybe a bad decision. Because in that moment, I don't know if you can trust your gut in that few seconds you have.
Okay. I suppose one model I have to ask about is your Thunderhammer. Wasn't a Thunderhammer, was it? It was a Relic Blade Storm Shield.
Oh yeah, the Relic Blade guy.
You used him quite. He got used.
He got used. He appeared in. He should have been in the Orc list. That was a mistake not to bring him.
Right.
I had, we'll talk about that later, but I didn't prep under my belt. He was in the Tau game, and he did fine. And he was in the Admech game, and I think he was probably a game winner in the Admech game. Although he was never a devastating. Oh, you know what? He was also in the Plasma, but I forget because he got killed the first turn.
Oh.
Yeah, when we get into the games. So he had a fair bit of use. And of course there are 2 of him. There's one version with a storm shield and one version without. So I'm kind of conflating those 2. but the Storm Shield version made it into the Plasma AdMech list and the Plasma Astra Militarum list, and then the non-Storm Shield was in the Tau and should have been in the York. And I guess now that I think about it, the Storm Shield Relic Blade guy was also in the Asuryani match. So I'll be damned. That guy.
Yes.
The one time I didn't bring him was the game I lost.
Well, there you go. There you go. So was he always a veteran?
Yeah, he's always a vet.
And did you always make that first turn move?
I did not make it with the Asuryani, and I don't. I typically don't. And I did make it with the Tau and with the Plasma, the Astra Militarum, and I always would. And as it turned out, I used it in the AdMech. I used the veteran move in the AdMech game too. So and I would not have used it in the Orc. So
right,
3 out of 5.
Did he have a jump pack?
No,
okay.
No, he did not.
He
doesn't need it that much because of course that's even more movement, but I find that that's a lot of points to get, some more movement that you usually don't need.
Sure. But presumably, as he had no gun, you would always advance him.
You advance him in the veteran move, and then you hope you can charge something.
Sure. Okay, makes sense. I suppose another quick question. I think I've asked it, but Plasma, did you ever overcharge your Plasma?
I overcharged the Plasma at least one time, and I believe only one time in the whole game.
So you had in the past said that you don't think you should ever overcharge Plasma as a general guideline, if not a rule.
Yeah.
Obviously, something changed. What was it that made you...
I don't know if I exactly said that, but I'm sure what I said is you should never overcharge Plasma just for fun.
Right, sure.
So you occasionally you're shooting at a model with 2 wounds, and it's pretty sensible to overcharge Plasma in that case. But if you don't need 2 wounds, you should never. I don't think you should ever overcharge Plasma. Want a better injury?
Right.
Like that's not a good enough reason to overcharge Plasma.
Yeah.
But if you're shooting at a 2-wound model, there's a huge benefit to it, and he's my guy's a sniper, so the odds should be in his favor. I will say the sniper was in, I think, just 2 games, but he would have killed himself twice in the 2 games he played with overcharged Plasma.
Right.
Had he been overcharging kind of willy-nilly.
Sure.
But luckily, those 2 times did not coincide with the single time he did overcharge.
Right. Okay. I think that's interesting. Cool. So, I think one of my big questions is... Let's start with... in White Dwarf, was the White Dwarf with the new Vanguard Space Marines released by the time SoCal happened?
Yeah, I think it just was, and to me it seemed to have nothing. It improved a little, but I don't love eliminators, so I kind of I wasn't really using them. I also didn't have the model, and it was too late to have gotten one by the time they kind of came out, and I got wind of that. So I gave a passing thought to them, and ultimately decided I didn't like them enough to put the work in and stuff like that. You've got good models to kind of be a static shooter. That's the Plasma guy's job, right? And so do I need another guy like that who's got the 2? I don't know. I think that I don't know that I need that particular job to be done, but people do seem to be pretty fond of them. So I'm sure there's a different list that has a place for them.
Okay. And you didn't feel any other model, I guess, or data sheet in that release had any merit?
There's like a new kind of something. It's like an intercursor,
intercursor, intercessor, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a new one, and it shoots and ignores cover. I
Yes.
mean, that's nothing wrong with that, I guess. But I mean, I don't know if I want to pay an extra. The kind of when you're making out your roster, what you think to yourself, well, the points not a lot, but I mean, you have some 15-point slots that have to be filled, and if you don't have some 15-point models, like your flexibility to swap around really goes down. So, is that guy better than an intercessor? Well, I suppose maybe he is, but he costs a point more. Like that's a no-go, right? Now I'm competing with a flamer guy. I'm not competing with the 15-point intercessor guy. So that was a piece of it too. Now I heard some rumor that intercessors might get Assault 3 carbines, or whatever their assault weapon is called. That might turn into an Assault 3, and that would absolutely have been something I was thinking about.
That would be a very interesting weapon.
And I mean, actually, when I heard that rumor, I kind of stopped working on the intercessors and I broke off the little bolts on their guns just in case I needed to switch them out
Right.
at the last. So I kind of waited until I had that information because I thought, that would be. There was a lot of matchups where that would have been a nice option. I would have switched out one of them and not the other because I used 2 intercessors when I faced Grey Knights, and that it is. It's not necessarily better against Grey Knights. But it's a lot better against like Harlequins and demons and stuff. There were no demons, but I didn't know that.
No, indeed. Okay.
So yeah, that would have been the one thing, but I didn't. Eliminators I think were the big thing, and I didn't have any eliminators. So
fair enough. So bit of a disappointing release for them there. But I suppose another question I'll ask is when it comes to zoning out. Obviously, they do have the infiltrators, which give you a 9-inch bubble instead of a 5.
Yeah.
That wasn't a concern for you?
Well, there were 2. I mean, there's 2 infiltrators on my shelf of shame.
Well, shall we jump straight over to your shelf of shame? Who didn't make the cut? Who did you try and you decided, nope? Yeah, well, the two what are they called? They're not called intercessors. They're called like infiltrators. 2 infiltrators didn't make the cut. And that was kind of the initial concept was like, okay, we're going to be infiltrating and that's going to be a big thing. I didn't end up liking it that much. So then they just became expensive. A scout missile launcher didn't make the cut. Right.
Got replaced kind of at the last second by the plasma guy, in fact.
Okay.
Which I found to be, I
would say, what was the reason?
Well, when I looked at the things I was trying to kill with the scout, I was better at killing all of them. And a lot of times on that kill team board, a lot of times you can get within 12 inches. And but even if I was between 12 and 24 inches, I found that the plasma gun was outperforming that scout missile launcher against the striking Scorpion Exarch, the Banshee Exarch. Those were 2 things I was particularly interested in maybe killing with the plasma gun. And then, surprisingly, also against the big bugs, the Tyranid big bugs. Even though you're only doing 2 damage and they have 3 wounds, statistically it just comes out better. And then if you're shooting at something like I didn't know if anybody's going to bring one, but if somebody's going to bring like a Terminator type thing, that AP -2 on the is just not good enough, right? So just between the bad AP and then the variance of D6 damage. And only getting 1 shot versus the potential of being able to run up and get 2, that plasma just turned out to be quite an outperformer. And then on top of that, I was finding there were so many games where that scout with the missile launcher, he was getting tied up by a Tyranid or something. And my plasma guy, who's a attack sergeant, he's got 2 swings. So he's 2 swings and a 3-up save. So he was, better at fighting it off. And since he took a combi plasma, he also has 4 shots on Overwatch, which was kind of nice. So I was finding that those Tyranid or Poxwalk or whatever those random tie-up models were having a much harder time dealing with him as easily as they did with the scouts.
Okay. And I believe the plasma's 1 or 2 points cheaper. Or am I making that up?
Yeah. It turned out to be the same price because I used a combi plasma and I used a attack sergeant. It could have been a point cheaper if I just maybe even I think it would have been 1 point cheaper if I just gone with attack gunner. I think with a regular plasma. But I like the combi option because that one of the lists that I bring that, well, two of the lists I bring that against, one didn't work out, was the Orcs, but the other one's the Tyrannid list. I bring that, and if you don't have a big bug to shoot at, it's nice to be able to shoot all 4 shots. It outperforms substantially against like a Tyrannid Gaunt or whatever.
Right. That makes sense. I suppose I'd never really thought of it that way. I guess my only issue previously with the missile launcher was one shot, so you got to stack all your buffs on it to hope you get the shot through and don't roll a 1. But yeah.
right. Well, and then you don't really want to.
Well,
yeah. And then you don't make a 5 with their armor save, and then so on it goes. And then you have to not roll a 1 at the end too, right? It's like there's a lot of ones to roll with that.
Yeah. Okay, so an interesting model to not make the list, as I think he is normally a staple. Definitely something that people recommend for most Astartes lists.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, that was another one of the very first things I picked, and another thing that was straight Stern Guard veteran with a regular gun.
Yeah. Normally a great model, but you're saying no.
I didn't end up having a place for him. And at a certain point you get locked into kind of, a lot of your lists and stuff like that. And there wasn't a lot of room for a 14-point model. He wasn't, a lot of meta lists don't have a lot of armor to get through, right? And that's really where he shines, is if there's a lot of armor to get through. I did have a Stern Guard Sergeant with a Lightning Claw and a Chain Sword and a Special Issue Bolter, right? And he costs 16 points. And he does quite a few things. Usually he was coming in, and he was a fairly common. And so, dropping 2 points to get his little brother, who's much worse in melee, it just didn't seem to work out. So I mean, and there were definitely times where I was like, man, I wish I had some 14-point models, but I couldn't swap enough out to make it to justify it. Another guy that I made that I just really liked, I don't know if it was ever going to be a great model, was a jetpack guy with 2 graphics. And I liked building that and modeling it and everything. Sure. And I knew he was using it against Asuryani and kind of thought I could like push the field with it and stuff. But ultimately, it's just pretty expensive. And, I was having to make too many sacrifices to get him onto a list. Auxiliary grenade launcher, that's another one people like, the intercessor with the auxiliary grenade launcher.
Yep.
I found there weren't too many circumstances where that outperforms the bolt rifle. I mean, there are a couple, but generally you're doing it because you are excited about the injury roll with the D3. But in most cases, you have a much harder time getting there. 1 shot instead of 2. It's just is the simple math. And even though it wounds a little bit better, with the crack grenade launcher, it's and it also doesn't have quite the same long range. And so and it costs a point, right? Once again, now you're competing with a different class of unit on the chart, so that didn't make the cut. I think that is. Those are all the things I can see quickly. There's certainly 1 or 2 others, but those are the ones who come to mind.
Okay. Were there any others that you had heard, like when reading up on a list, that you just instantly read and thought, why on earth are people taking that? And just kind of... Well,
I don't want to say why on earth are people taking that, but I mean, there's a lot of people sort of like everything. Like it's got a storm shield, it's got a big sword, it's got a jump pack, and I don't want to say that's not a good unit, but I just think that you have to think about, what is the guy's job in a given matchup. And, I mean, there's some times where that's a nice thing to have, but generally speaking, you're better off shaving some of those points in a given matchup to be able to have some more guys do other things, I think. And then I think as a counterpoint to that, a model that I take that I've never take is my veteran sergeant with the storm shield and the storm bolter, and then he was all about facing plasma, And what I had found when I fought against plasma spam lists is that one guy was going to charge and hopefully make his charge and kind of lock up an area. And then a couple guys were going to run like crazy across the field and try to get cover. But you could only expect so many guys to be able to do that. Maybe one, maybe two. And then other guys had to kind of stay back. And in terms of that staying back, I found in every layout I did, there was one guy who was going to be just hanging out in the open. There was just always a guy you wanted in the open. And if you didn't have a guy who could be in the open, then you kind of ended up hiding, on a side. And then that gave a lot of options to the other. So that guy's job was to just go out and like give all the plasma guys a shot. You know what I mean? And just kind of be a target and, and he worked brilliantly at that. He worked against me and I knew I was doing that trick, but still it's just like, Jesus, I can either, shoot with a single shot all the way downtown, or I can take my shots against this guy and maybe I break through. And you will see when I actually got to the game against the Astra Militarum, he did get killed in the first round, like the first thing that shot at him. So
right.
But what he did do is a lot of guys moved into position to shoot him with the assumption that they were going to require multiple shots to take him down. So even though he got killed by the first guy, he ultimately did draw the fire he needed to and kind of accomplish his mission. Mm-hmm. But that's a great example of a model that I don't think it makes sense in the abstract, right? Like you're just thinking about like, well, what's cool or what's going to be fun to bring, because you're like, well, a storm bolter doesn't do all that much. You're spending a lot of points on a guy who doesn't have a lot of offense. So what's the reason? But in that particular matchup, he had a really specific job, and a storm bolter is very threatening to Astra Militarum unit. So that ended up being great. Whereas in the abstract, like a supermodel with a relic blade and 5 attacks and a jump pack and a storm shield, it seems like he can take on anything, and you kind of can't take on anything. But the thing is, you don't have to take on anything. You have to take on, what you're facing at the moment. And usually the thing you're facing does not require all of those tools to overcome it.
I think another just popped into my mind now. Another unit that a lot of people recommend is a Reaver Sergeant as a combat. Did you just kind of, nope, don't need that? Or
a Reaver Sergeant who's combat spec, you said?
Yeah, so I think you get 5 attacks.
I've got one on my list. Okay. And I'll tell you what, in the Goonhammer article, they were like, yeah, I got some disagreements with this list, and then they called out that unit. That the Reaver Sergeant with the combat spec was not a great
really?
model, and I will admit he did not actually get any playtime in the games I got, but he I think he's a very good model against demons.
Right. Yep.
He's probably a good model. I haven't had a lot of experience against Drukhari, but I had him when you're facing Drukhari, Harlequins, and demons. You get all these invuln saves. And a guy with 2 wounds, a 3-up armor save, who's got just a lot of attacks that don't care about your invuln, is going to be nice. And he played really well for me in demon and Harlequin matchups. So that's what he was in there purely for that. And the only reason I expect is because in that particular matchup, I just didn't have a 4th. I wasn't using one of the the 4th specialist that I already had, so I ended up having an extra specialist slot. And eventually I noticed he wasn't anywhere else, or I think I took him out of the one place he was somewhere else and then gave him the combat specialism, because then that, he would no longer fit in whatever his other list was, because now he had an extra specialism, but he was able to fill that, allow me to be rounded out. So he's a little bit better with 5 attacks than 4. 25% better.
If you want to do the maths, sure.
Yeah, if you want to do the maths.
Okay, interesting. I'm actually more interested that the Goonhammer article said that it was a bad choice, because
I thought I was like, well, I know what he's there for, but I don't know.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Okay, I think we've covered pretty much everything I wanted to touch on. Did you want to go over your games on day 2?
Sure. Okay, so there were 5 games. The first game was against Janice.
Yes. You were on the stream for that.
I was on the stream, so some of you might have seen it already. Eventually, Sheldon's going to put that stuff up, but one day that game will be available for us all.
One day.
Sheldon set that game up. That was not. He wanted.
You cut out for a moment there. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, Sheldon. I mean, he kind of set up that game as the first game, right? He wanted me to be playing somebody else, who's somewhat known in the community the first round. I think he liked the idea of me playing Asuryani because that's my faction. So, but I mean, of course, the downside for Janice is that she had never played against Astartes before, and that I, kind of did my proof of concept for Astartes playing against Asuryani because that's
right.
How to play, right? So, I had a very solid plan of attack for how that, what my list was, how I was going to approach that particular map, because I'd played that map against Asuryani a few times. And then, we also saw I killed a lot of things the first round. Now, I will tell you, I think that generally speaking, I will kill a lot of things in that first game, and the Asuryani, if they're not able to get their Banshee and their Scorpion in, and of course my whole movement was to make that impossible for them. But if they're not able to get those in, they will not kill very much because they'll only have the Star Cannon, and then they'll have fusion guns that move up, but they're going to be shooting hitting on 5s, so you can't really expect too much out of them. And plus, one of them is very likely to be taken out or, at very least flesh wounded before it even gets to shoot. And that one Star Cannon, which we do expect to get a kill, is going to be death denied, right? And so I think that the expectation out of the Asuryani in the first round is 1 kill and 1 flesh wound, and that's going to end up being 2 flesh wounds. And I am going to get several kills of crucial things, and that's exactly how it went down. She dropped her Scorpions behind me, 2 of them anyway. She had 2 Scorpions, and probably was a mistake that she dropped. The Scorpion XR within shot of the plasma guy. So I was able to comms that and overcharge it and just eliminate the Scorpion XR, which is one of the the really critical pieces that I need to account for. So that was killed right off the bat. And everything else kind of moved up to hold the center, which was what all my objectives were about, right? And then she stayed back and kind of tried to shoot, which is is not going to be an ideal. You're in a spot where you've allowed me to shoot better than you when you're the Asuryani. You're not moving, so you've given up kind of your one real strength, and you're just my death denied is going to win that equation with any kind of moderate dice. And as it turned out, I rolled quite well. She didn't even get an out of that round. I think I took out 2, and then on top of that, she failed the nerve test for her pilot of the Star Cannon, right? Who, of course, because I play the Star Cannon all the time, so I'm like, well, yeah, shoot at the damn pilot, right? She's only got one guy who can fire it, and he's very, very vulnerable. And in the second round, I was able to bait out her Banshee, right, which is kind of the key. I've got that model, 22-point model with the Storm Shield and the Relic Blade, because that is something that her melee does not really have an answer for, right? She's got a Banshee who's devastating as everything else on my roster, the Scorpion, which is quite dangerous, not quite as devastating, but very, very dangerous itself. And but neither of them can handle that dude with the Storm Shield, because they're pretty unlikely to be able to kill him, even if they swing first. So I knew that, and so I needed to get him with her, and that happened in the second turn. And then she spent her command points to strike first. Did not get the kill. If she had, I probably still had a death denied in my back pocket. And then I did kill her because he's extremely likely to kill either of them. I think that was just she hadn't played against it, so she didn't understand that the kind of essential game was, where does my Relic Blade go versus where do your 2 melee pieces go, and can you get around my Relic Blade and get into the rest of my army with it, which then, now you're going to have a numbers advantage and you can kind of score points and stuff. But that didn't happen, so it was a pretty lopsided victory for me, as it turned out. But you saw the game. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I suppose to add to what you said, yeah, okay, so turn one, you killed the two fusion guns and you flesh wounded the Guardian Gunner, who then failed morale, so shook.
Right.
Then turn two, you charged into the Star Cannon, so that was done. That was done for the game, effectively, wasn't it? Even if you didn't kill it, you were in combat.
It was not.
Well, no. But she then charged in with her Banshee, failed the kill. You killed the Banshee. Yeah. So it was
and then he fell back with the Star Cannon. He made his morale check. Fell back. She fell back with the Star Cannon. Made the morale check, and then did fire and allowed herself to shoot after falling back.
Yes. But yeah, I think both me and Alex were very, we were just kind of, oh dear. After you took out both fusion guns turn one, before either of them got to shoot, I believe. Yeah.
I think one or two of them did get to shoot, but they're hit when they move and they're not within 6 inches. They're going to hit on a 5, and that's a 6 if I'm in cover. I think they managed to get 5s off, but they're really vulnerable to that intercessor fire, right?
Do they take -1 for moving?
Well, let's see. Why is it? I guess you're right. They don't take -1. So I think maybe it was a 4 and a 5 then.
But still, yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to look at it again. But I think one of them fire, and the other one did fire, but did not manage to connect.
Sure.
The Star Cannon, I think, failed to do anything.
It must have missed. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it actually just straight up missed. So that was certainly, I guess my point is that there was some bad luck there. And then, when did my bad luck came? Well, I would have killed my plasma guy on the second and the third turn if I had overcharged on either of those. But of course I didn't.
Sure.
Partly because the game had gone my way already, so I didn't need to. So sometimes it's all about when the dice, they come at the critical time or not,
And which secondaries did you take for that mission, out of curiosity? Do you remember?
I took the hold the center objective one.
Yep.
I took domination. Yep. So hold the center the second time.
Again.
And then the third one was probably something about killing the opponent. Okay. I would guess it was bounty hunters.
Okay.
I think is available on that. Hey, you know what? Here we are. Ooh. Let's look. They're all circled. Bounty hunters indeed.
Ah.
So mission critical supplies, domination, and bounty hunters. So 2 positional, 1 killing. It's a pretty positional game, right? And I, get the center. That is, right. That was, well, my list functioned exactly as planned in that particular matchup. So everything went great and did not really have any hiccups, right? So that makes for a boring game to watch, probably.
It was a brutal game. Yeah.
Right.
But then turn 2, you were moved off the top board, despite winning.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So I don't think I remember what happened. Game 2 or 3.
Well, game 2 was maybe my favorite game of the match. And an interesting thing I'll tell you about the my Astartes day is I had the hardest batch of opponents you could imagine. I think my opponents ultimately came in 1st place, 3rd place, 4th place, 6th place, and then Alex with Admech I think maybe came 11th, but it's only because he only lost 1 game to me, right? Nobody who I played lost any games to anybody except for me. Oh, okay. And of course, Emmanuel didn't lose any games at all. And I played all 3 of those, Alex and Emmanuel from that one club, who've been practicing together. And it was so the Astartes, on that sense, had a hard match of it. And then the second they had was Astra Militaire and Plasma Spam against Alan, who ultimately came in 6th place. I must have been his only loss for him to come in 6th place. And that was a really cool game on the pivotal point. And I did not have good dice in that game. I charged, I made a mistake too. I charged my relic blade.
Turn 2 was against Imperial Guard. Is that what we're saying?
Imperial Guard,
okay.
Plasma Spam. Yeah.
Right.
And I have a plasma list. It's definitely a matchup I tested. It was, if you're playing Astartes, plasma is like a thing you're scared of, right? Yeah. So I had my 2 guys with storm shields, the one with the relic blade and one with storm bolter, who we described earlier. I had my heavy bolter. I had my guy, my normal leader, of course, an extra scout, a flamer, and then another just storm bolter guy. That was my roster. And he had, I wouldn't call it a complete plasma spam. I think he had 6 plasma. He didn't, you could take up to 8, I guess. He had 6. He had Pious Vorn, and then he had a fusion gun, and then he had, just a bunch of guardsmen. He did not have the
Crusader. Godfred de Montbard. Yeah.
Which that would have been a new kind of challenge. But I charged my relic blade, and I veteran moved it, and I kind of did a foolish placement, such that Pious Vorn was able to countercharge. He ended up going first, and Pious Vorn was able to get into combat with him, and that was a real problem, because then she got, and she's a good person to kill a person with a storm shield, because she has a lot of hits and a lot of wounds. She seems to reroll them all, and she gets to fight twice, right? Because he gave her the order to fight the first time, and then the order to fight the second time, and I didn't even have it because I'd done a veteran move. And what I do in those is, I'm kind of relying on reroll the 3-up invuln save is what I'm going to use that one command point for that. So that happened. I got countercharged by Pious Vorn. I don't remember the long charge for. It must have been a modestly long charge at least, because I wouldn't have gone right next to her. But that was unfortunate. So that it did take Pious Vorn out of the game a bit, because she was then so far away from the action, because it's pivotal point, right? So I'd run all the way across the diagonal, and there was kind of a big obstructing, like a jet on a landing pad in the center, and Pious Vorn had to go back to get me, and so then she was not able to move very quickly the rest of the game to get into the action. But that happened, and as I said, I put out my storm bolter guy with the storm shield on the exposed objective, and he was doing exactly what he was supposed to. And because I was able to obscure most of my other guys, the plasma guys, their one good shot was going to be on him, and they did kind of move to make sure they were going to put a lot of fire onto him. And then the very first guy with the fusion gun fired. He dropped in a couple guys, airdropped him, like kind of right around there. The fusion gun fired. I missed the save. I did my reroll. I missed the save a second time, and he was killed. So he died instantly. And then when Pious Vorn got to fight, she put a flesh wound on me. And then when she got to fight a second time in the actual fight phase, she killed my main guy. And I think I only killed one thing that turn. So he didn't take attrition. I had taken attrition. But if he had taken it, he would have scored it on me the first turn. if you're the Astartes facing plasma spam, that's a terrible place to be.
That's rough. That's rough.
So that was the beginning of it. But what happened in the second turn? So this is the board, and I'm on this kind of this side of it, and he's on this side. I had moved a flamer and a scout out this way. I'd moved my storm shield guy up this way. He'd gotten killed. There was another guy with a storm bolter ready to kind of jump in behind him. And my heavy bolter and my comm scout were in this bottom part, shooting across the field. And they could shoot everybody on the field. Not everybody, but almost everybody within 8 set up with 2 up to hit, 2 up to wound, AP -1. And in the second turn, as he was kind of rushing over to take advantage of my weakness, he was incautious in how he placed his guys, and he ended up putting 3 plasma guys within 2 inches of each other. And I split the shots, and I ended up taking 2 of them out of action with that one heavy bolt in the second turn. Which, it hits on 2s, it wounds on 2s, and they got it's it's a dreadfully lethal thing for them.
Sure.
But still nice to get the 2 out of action rolls on that. I think the third one either didn't hit or flush. I don't know what happened with the third one, but that shook him up, and then he on the second turn was not flamer. He did put plasma shot on with the comms, and I had the death denied to keep the flamer in the game with a flesh wound. And then he was not any kills because I had taken out the 2 plasmas that were in the very best position. That sort of vacated the upper corner where he dropped his guys in, and so they had to kind of reposition. I think he had to go first that second turn as well, so I was kind of, he didn't know where I was going to be, and he had to kind of figure it out. So after that sort of huge advantage the first turn, his second turn did not go as well. And he had picked secondaries that he just couldn't score. He'd picked Scout the Field, and he had not been able to get the movement to get it done the first turn. He was kind of staying back a little bit. The second, trying to get out to get it, I was able to kill one of those 2 guys I killed was sort of a critical Scout the Field holder, so he didn't get that. And I think he'd taken Death from Afar. So Scout the Field, Death from Afar, and Sector Cleared was his third one. And he was never able to get, I think he only scored 1 secondary point the whole game. And so despite having sort of that positional advantage, I was, the one thing I think about that game to predict what his secondaries would be, because attrition and thin the ranks, you're not going to take those against a Marine, or at least that was my estimation. And then when he killed Toomey the first turn and didn't get any secondaries, I knew he hadn't taken either of those 2. So at that point, it was like, I could kind of guess, well, he's going to take Death from Afar. He's going to take. I knew he was trying to take Scout the Field because he'd kind of revealed that in his movement. And so I was able to kind of play carefully to deny those secondaries, and I was able to get a few of them myself. I was 2 sectors to get sector cleared, 2 turns. I was able to get thin the ranks the second turn, and then the third turn, he had actually already fallen behind on points, despite that beginning part. Pious Vorn wasn't able to do anything the second turn. The third turn, she kind of moved around, but still she was on an objective at least, but she wasn't in any position to shoot anybody. So she was kind of made into a non-factor. And my flamer had now gotten up in the face of some of the plasma guys up in this corner, and that was that was inhibiting their ability to get any damage. And that heavy bolter guy continued to be just a tremendous threat. He could never, he never again made the mistake of putting 2 guys within 2 inches. But that was a little bit challenging for him because he had a fair number of models, and having scattered them out means that he was like leaving guys out of cover. He wasn't getting guys where he wanted them to be to shoot and stuff like that. So ultimately, although we took a very long time with our first 2 turns, we played into lunch and were able to finish the game. And I think I got maybe a 13-8 victory, something along those lines. And that was I think that was one where it was tough secondary for him, and he was more focused on like sort of taking out my key units than he was on scoring points the first turn. And although that worked out, it ultimately maybe lost him the game.
Right. Okay. A quick aside in that case, as you kind of mentioned it there, one of the keys you felt was that you kind of figured out which secondaries he had, and that made it a little bit easier for you. Another thing that the people are talking about is having, I've already said open secondaries, so we're going to say known secondaries. So you pick your secondaries, and your opponent knows what you've picked. How do you feel about that as a game mechanic?
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess I think it's, one thing I think I like about these limited secondaries, kind of fun to try to get opponent secondaries are going to be, and then you're playing a little game of cat and mouse with them. As you kind of watch their actions, you can figure out what it is, and I think that's something that not every player is doing. And so if you're doing it, that's giving you a little bit of an edge. So known secondaries kind of takes that piece out of it. So I don't know that I see an advantage in that sense.
Okay. You don't. I believe the current thought is if you know what your opponent has to do right from the get-go, you can try to counteract it, and that
Sure.
maybe is more
But,
fun.
but you can do that now without knowing. You just, you know what I mean? It's just a riskier proposition, and it's something you have to balance against. He's probably taking these things.
Mm.
So how much effort am I going to put into preventing him from doing that? And I think the uncertainty makes that an interesting dynamic. Whereas if you know exactly what they're going to do, then I mean, yeah, it's still a resource balance, I guess. But I think there was an element to the game of thinking about what your opponent's secondaries are and trying to act to deny them. And that is something that if we make that piece of the game easier, we're just taking skill out of the game a little bit, maybe, right? Because that's a skill-based thing, right? There's no argument that I don't think there's any argument that one faction is doing better because we have hidden primaries and therefore we're helping that one faction. Right? This is just a matter of yeah, it's almost like that's like a tutorial mode. I mean, I think it's certainly a good thing to play practice games with your friends that way to get used to the idea of thinking about your opponent's secondaries. And then once you've seen it with open, then when you're playing with closed, you're going to have a little bit more insight. Mm. But I don't see a value in making that the style of play.
Okay, I think that gels with my ideas. I'm not necessarily against known secondaries, but I'm also not for it. It's just kind of okay, I guess. I mean, sure. Right. You know, doesn't really change the game. Have you ever found yourself possibly winning a game because you had found out your opponent's secondaries and you managed to deliberately deny them? Or
yeah, definitely. I won the final game of the arena battle, which was a tournament I went to with Sheldon way back. I played Tyranids in the final game, and I had correctly deduced by the second turn that he had I need to hold an objective for the entire game, and I worked very hard to deny him that. And when I got that kill, that kind of is what sealed the victory for me. So there you go. You know, and if I hadn't been thinking about that, I might have just been like, oh, well, I don't. And I wouldn't have been like, I was moving all these guys to shoot at his guy on the far objective, not because I needed the objective points, but just because I was hoping that was his secondary. And if I killed the one guy who was on at that turn, he suddenly wasn't going to have that hold for all 4 turns.
Fair enough. Okay, yeah, so random aside tangent there. Did you want to head back to game 3?
Yeah. So game 3. So that was game 2 against Alan. Game 3 was against Tao. I'll be honest. I was hoping not to have to play day 1 and day 2, and I had to play Tao day 1 and day 2.
Right.
Against people I've played before who I know. I know are good at Tao. Eric the first day, and Luke, who was in that tournament I just mentioned. I'd played him in that tournament before. And Luke's Tao look really good. I love the basing he's done on them. They're black with like these orange plants on the bases. They look super cool. And I thought that was probably going to be a really bad game for me. There wasn't a lot of line of sight terrain on that particular map.
Was he taking the standard drone spam rail finders?
Yeah, I think that not as drone spammy as Eric's list the day before. Okay. Like Eric really took the drone spam to like a high level. Yeah. Luke actually brought the list that I had made for Tau that I was practicing against, and that involved a fusion scout thing. They had those 2 wound, -1 to hit leader models, right? So he had one of those, a scout suit with fusion.
Oh, stealth.
I think he had only 2 railguns, and then the third one was an ion gun because that's kind of what made the points work. And then quite a few different kinds of pathfinders. Well, I mean, one of them with the indirect fire rocket system, right?
Oh, okay. You had the DS8 turret.
And then a decent number of drones. Not as many shield drones as Eric had brought the day before. More of the gun drones was my recollection. So I think a pretty strong list. And devastatingly, for me, Tau Sept. That's I think the two septs are really good. Tau Sept, Overwatch on fives, and the other one is the Shazva or whatever. I think the Shazva is better against a lot of matchups, but the Tau is absolutely better against a melee list, right?
What does the other one do? Is that reroll ones?
The other one's reroll all ones and +1 leadership,
Yes.
which, I mean, +1 leadership is huge for Tau. So the Asuryani that I'd played the previous day, they would have loved to have faced Tau Sept because they don't, the Banshees don't care and nothing else charges. And the Astartes really would have loved to play the Shazva because they definitely want to do some charging. But that's how it went down. So I think my summary of the game was that I probably was going to need the dice to go a little bit my way, and the dice went a bit my way. I think that would be the overall summary. The first turn, I think I got to go. I don't remember if I went first or second, but I know my advance was really incredible, and I was able to kind of really establish. Yeah, I went second actually. I did go second, so I think that's generally nice against the Tau. I had done a veteran move with my Relic Blade guy who does not have a Storm Shield against Tau, even though it does seem to be nice. But my thinking is that he wants to probably charge not a railgun. He wants to charge like an isolated drone or something like that, because I'm going to win the game by forcing break tests. And so I don't need to necessarily kill his biggest shooters. I just need to get some kills and some flesh wounds stacking up here and there, and I need to kind of stay in the game. So he advanced up. If the screen is the board, he kind of advanced up. I don't know I guess it's going to look like this. So he advanced up on this side, and my other guys kind of took up position throughout the middle. I was able to hand one objective.
Sorry, can you repeat that? Sound just completely cut for a moment there.
Yeah, no problem. And this is, this mission's got like 5 objectives, 1 in the center, 2 in the corners, right? It's the yard by yard or rune by rune, depending on what version you're looking at. So my guys basically ran up to about the center line. A few guys could hide on the battle line, which was nice. I hadn't anticipated that. And although you could sort of see everywhere because this building in the middle had windows you could look through, you could find little corners and stuff where suddenly people couldn't see. And also there was one little line of sight blocking piece on each side. And we made so much use of that on both sides. So I was able to charge a couple guys up where they were not visible from the railguns on this side of the board behind his one little line of sight blocking piece. I charged my main guy with the veteran move, had gone up here, and then he was able to make a long charge onto the drone in the center. And that's where I used my reroll, because of course I'd used one veteran move, 1 point for the veteran move to get there, and then I needed to make an 8-inch charge, and I got that on the reroll. So that was critical. If I hadn't done that, I mean, I think it's hard to imagine winning the game, because he would certainly have been able to put a lot of fire onto that guy. I wouldn't have had anything to stop him. And so the result was that I was able to probably get 2 kills the first turn just from randomly shooting, and he didn't get any. His railguns did not have any good position. Able to make my 3-up saves, when the drones were able to connect. I basically denied almost all of his railgun shooting. He had 1 long shot on my heavy bolter guy, and I think he just flubbed it. So his 1 railgun with a good shot did not make the roll. My various shooting and stuff did well enough to, I think, get one kill. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take that back. I did not get just a flesh wound with all my shooting, but my relic blade did kill the drone he had charged, and so he was free up in the center of the board, kind of in position to charge lots of different things in a second. My flamer, who'd run all the way up and had a beautiful shot on one of his pathfinders, just did terribly. Had rolled a 1 for the number of shots, and then didn't even wound with the 1 shot. So I won't say the dice all went my way, but I made that for sure, and he failed that critical shot with his railgun. So, and I did a very nice advance to kind of get board position. The second turn, I had to make a really risky charge with the relic blade because everything was locked up in pockets. I ended up charging his guy with the fusion gun, and he was able to use for the greater good to put 2 drones and a railgun all on. One of them did connect, and I was able to use Death Denied to save myself, basically. So I used the Death Denied, got into the charge on his leader with the fusion gun. On the right side, I made a very, which was I charged something worthless before my relic blade charged, because after my relic blade charged, nothing could for the greater good anymore. And I could have made really impactful charges on that side. That was just a bad play on my part. But luckily, it didn't end up mattering. My shooting was pretty effective in the second round, and just with Intercessor's heavy bolter, I ended up taking a railgun and a regular Pathfinder out of the game.
Did he
my
not
relic
manage
blade did
to save your protocol, or?
No, he did not. He did not manage to save your protocol. And I, maybe I've got that wrong. I think I fired with my stern guard, and the first shot hit and wounded his railgun. He failed that. We didn't even have a save because it's -2 AP. He killed his drone with Savior Protocol. Second shot killed, so that one guy just had really good shooting, and he killed the drone and the railgun in one go.
I suppose a quick question there about facing Tau. I'm probably going to have to do that myself in the coming weeks. And when every time I face Tau, I make the mistake, which I realise is a mistake looking back on it, of shooting a rail rifle guy at some point, because I don't play Tau that often. And every time I'm like, oh bollocks, I should have just shot the drone. I shouldn't even bother to shoot one of the guys. But you deliberately shot at some of the guys?
Well, I mean, you're going to do slow dice, and then you're going to force them to make that decision, right? So, I mean, it depends what you're shooting with. If you're shooting with like a big, dangerous gun, then you should shoot it probably a drone, because instead of him rolling one die against himself, you're going to get your multiple injury dice. So in that case, you're good, and you're going to get your aim and everything else. But I didn't bring any weapons like that against Tau. I bring the heavy bolter. No, I mean, he doesn't even have the columns backing him up. He's just heavy bolter guy. I bring 2 flamers who get up. I bring my grab pistol guy. He never gets to do anything, but he's there. I bring the stern guard guy. So I'm throwing grenades. I'm doing like all this low AP shooting, and what I find is that it adds up, and the result is you can target the Pathfinders because you just one die at a time, right? And like that heavy bolter guy, I mean, it's 3 dice that are all, even without the help, they're still pretty effective because they still wound on 2s, and he's got long range, so he's probably hitting on 4s, so that's not great, but he's getting 1 or 2 wounds across, and then he's got to decide for every one, man, does he put it on the drone? There's still another 2 dice coming. I don't know what's going to happen. So, I like putting him in that spot. But if you brought something like a star cannon, then you should shoot the drone. But even better not to bring a star cannon, because they don't have a lot of stuff that's good to shoot at with that. I'd rather shoot at the this high volume stuff at the Pathfinders, and make him make the decision and kind of kill his own guys over time. So I think I just got those 2 kills the second turn, but once again he came up empty, and he didn't. I think this time I had moved my heavy bolter into a spot where it was a harder shot, so he didn't. His plasma gun or his railgun was not a. I think now that I recall, he actually flesh wounded my heavy bolter with his railgun the second turn. Other railgun was killed, so it was out of the picture. His fusion guy was in combat, didn't have anything to shoot. His ion guy only could shoot all the way across, so he was like hitting on a 5 or a 6, I think a 6. So I was denying his shooting effectively. I was bringing up a number of threats to get him into melee, and most importantly, I was getting more points than him. I had held more 2 rounds in a row. I was scoring a few secondaries. I had a number of bounty hunter tokens littered around. And in the 3rd round, he just didn't have very much he could do. I was kind of all over, and he fell back, but I had like 2 guys who were in position to charge, and 2 guys, the bottom line is I was kind of all over him on his side of the board. And although I think he did take something out of action, he was behind on points, and he didn't really have a good prospect of turning that around. And we ended up finishing the game after the 3rd turn, and I think it was maybe 11-7 was the final score.
Why did you finish after the 3rd turn? Time or?
Ran out of time.
So that's actually 2 of your games that went to time then. I mean, the one before lunch you had time because you had lunch, but
the second one we did get to play to completion. But the 3rd one definitely. I didn't have. We didn't have as much time, and I mean, I would have probably cleaned up. Well, I mean, you never know, but I probably would have cleaned up point wise in the 4th turn because there were bounty. I didn't get any bounty hunter points in that game, and there were 3 tokens just sitting there waiting to be picked up. So I would have got that and some more. But on the other hand, I mean, things. I don't think he had a path to, and so he didn't. I mean, he kind of conceded.
Right.
And then time was called like a moment later, and then we're just like, well, let's just call it time. So like I said, I think that's a game. If I get bad decision as I did, but if I'd had bad dice in that game, I don't think I really would have had a way to win. I needed it to at least go decently for me, so that was the making the charge and him missing railgun together. That was enough to kind of keep it rolling. So that was the 3rd match. Any questions, comments?
I suppose I have to ask again. Secondaries.
Oh, certainly. Secondaries for the 3rd match. I had bounty hunters. I had thin the ranks, and I had death from afar, which I was hoping to get with flamers. And ultimately, I did not get any of those, but I did get thin the ranks twice. And then I dominated on the primaries. So that's, I think, how 2 points for secondaries and 9 points for primaries was my final score. I don't have the actual final score written down, but that's approximately right.
So you didn't actually score that many secondaries. You weren't like going 18 every round then.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. I mean, even the first game, I didn't get 18. I think I got 16 or 17.
Well, I mean, that's still a high score. But in this one, you actually didn't score at all 2 of your secondaries.
Yeah, although, again, if we'd had a 4th round, I would have.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah.
And then, death from afar was just bad luck. My flamers were. They had shots every turn. That part of the plan really went well, but they couldn't roll well. But then it made up for it otherwise, right? With that stern guard veteran. Is that noise troubling? You might not be able.
We can hear the noise, but it's faint. I think we'll survive.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was the 3rd game, and then he would have taken also. Death from afar. He took scout from the field for sure, and then he took down. So he wasn't getting a lot of kills. Didn't get. And scout the field. He probably got the first turn, but I think the 2nd turn I was able to prevent it from. And then more importantly, I was pushing him back on the objectives. He only got I think 2 objectives one time and 1 objective 2 times.
Right. Okay.
Pushing the field was the key there, and so all those good advance rolls the first turn certainly contributed. So that was game 3. Game 4, it just kept coming. Now I was playing with the Zadmek.
Yes.
And I'd been scared of Alex the whole time. I have no practice against that. I thought they were a good faction, but I couldn't quite figure out what the list was. In the practice time I had, I went with slightly more certain opponents, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So I was pretty confident that my reign of terror was going to come to a close. I did not, happy to have 3 victories with these Astartes. My goal was to go 3-1 with them if I could. And now I'm placing, this guy who's, I know everybody's told me he's a really good player, and he's bringing a list that I don't know that well. We good? Thank you, sir. So from there, I wasn't really sure what I was in for. And like I told you earlier, I don't think I did my best job knowing how to prepare for this. I ended up just bringing my plasma list. And that was fun, but I probably could do some tweaking to think that through a little bit better.
A quick question. So what were you expecting him to bring?
Well, I was really unsure about whether he would bring plasma, which he had probably 5 on the list, or whether he would bring a lot of priests, because he had a fair number on the list. So he could have had a very priesty list, or he could have had a very plasma list. He ended up having a very balanced list. I think he brought 3 plasma and 1 priest of each type, and then a leader and like a couple aspects. And then he brought 2 of the Sicarian infiltrators.
Sure, yeah.
And he had those in Deep Strike. So that was, I think the list he brought was probably a pretty good. And what I had was fine, but maybe not in all ways as outstanding as possible. This was Raised Archive, and the objectives I took, I think the one part of my game for a recon sweep strategy, I was going to get my relic guy into his backfield and sit there the whole time and try to just, survive with him. Not necessarily even go for the best targets, but just like make sure I scored the recon sweep. And then I went for Evaluate Find as well. Yeah. And I was thinking between those two, maybe I can score the 6 points pretty well. And then I think I did take Cut Apart as the third one, hoping the Relic Blade guy would kill at least one thing. And then not knowing, because I didn't know it all, but I've got a few other guys who are decent in melee, right? My Storm Bolter guy does get 4 swings with a chainsword, and I've got a few other guys who are kind of like that, 3 swings, 4 swings. So I figured, these guys aren't that durable. I probably got a decent chance to get at least 2 Cut Aparts, hopefully 3 recon sweeps, hopefully 3 Evaluate Finds. And so as long as I'm attentive to the objectives, I should be able to stay in this game unless he just kind of like blows me off the table, which is hard to do with Astartes. So that part of the game went really well. I advanced, veteran moved, I charged. He countercharged with both priests, which, good and bad, but it really takes him into the corner, right? Just like last time, if I'm going way into because if this is the board, I charged down here, and his guys came from sort of a center position back to me. So now they're really kind of locked out of the game. And when he charged, he didn't know I was going for recon sweep. He did not make the guys who charged the closest to me, because I hadn't charged base to base with the guy I was going after. And he came up and put him about exactly the same distance away. And so when it was my turn to fight, I'm like, hey, you agreed these are the same distance? And he's like, yeah, I would agree with that. So that means I can wiggle around the first guy, getting myself into position for recon sweep, which I wasn't able to quite do with the charge roll.
Okay. And
if he'd known that that's what I was going to do, he might have taken action to prevent that.
Almost certainly, yeah.
So how that melee played out, I killed I plasma guy, killing him in the Cut Apart. Both of his priests got to swing back, but they were not able to take my guy out. They might have put a flesh wound onto him. But, priests actually are not the most they're not like super devastating. Like the electro, the shoot, I think only gets 2 swings, and the other one gets 4 swings, and it's got a little bit better of a chance. But I get 3 up save at the end of it all. And even after that, he only does 1 point of damage. So it's they were not as scary as I thought they were, at least against them.
Well, it must have been your 3 up
infiltrate-
save that saved you there, because the Fulgurite Priest is 2 damage.
Is the Fulgurite the
That's
melee
the
one? Or
the staff guy. Yeah, he gets 2 swings, AP's -2, damage 2, I want to say.
Okay, fair enough. I felt like his was swinging more, like it was swinging 4 times. I thought.
Could have been a combat.
Staff, maybe do they have another weapon?
Nah.
Yeah,
But
maybe I'm
obviously,
wrong.
if they were combat, that would still be 3 attacks. So
maybe you only got 3. Maybe I just remember wrong. Then I might just be remembering wrong. Alex knew his army really, really well, so I'm very confident doing the right thing with his pieces. In fact, he and luckily I don't think this came up in any other game, but I thought the Auspex was like comms. It was 6 inches, and he pointed out to me that I was wrong. So the Auspex is only 3 inches, and so I did not get to use the Auspex the first round of that game.
Right. Oh wow. Okay.
But I was thinking about in each other, so it wouldn't matter. And I didn't bring the comms guy in the Tau game. The Asuryani, I'm not sure about the Asuryani game. I might have misused the aspects. We'd have to, if we watch the tape, we might be able to see. So he knew his army better than I knew mine, I think would be fair to say. That's what happened on that side of the field. And then he brought 2 plasma. Well, he brought a plasma guy up onto each side, and then another guy as well. And I sort of just stayed back on the line and just opened up on him. I had readied, and so with my intercessor, with my storm bolter, with my heavy bolter, and that's a lot of firepower against that. You know what I mean? We wound them really well, even without the Auspex. And so I ended up killing both of those guys on the top of the field. And I think he kind of underestimated the firepower there. But they both came out of that. On the bottom, I was able to get a flesh wound on the guy on the objective, but he ended up making. I think he failed the nerve test as well. So the final result at the end of the first round was nobody held this objective down here. I held this objective up here because I'd moved a flamer up who never even got a chance to shoot because the guys were already dead, and was holding this one. He was holding the one back here, and I was holding the one up here. So I had hold more. I had taken out 2 of his guys, 3 of his guys, and 2 of the plasmas, right? Because I got a charge on the plasma guy down here, and I got the 2 guys who were up here, one of whom was plasma. And he, I believe, did not kill anything in return. He only had really 1 dangerous shot. That was the plasma. And I think he went after my leader. I think he'd cut off the head.
Right.
He's cut off. Yep. No, cut off the head is not. He did not cut off the head because I kill my leader. Of course, if you kill the leader, then I can't do the turn. So it's hugely good. But that was a tougher shot with the plasma. It did not succeed with it. He dropped the 2 Sicarians in those, so they were in a position to charge all over the place, and I had so that's where we stood. But it was a pretty good setup for me because I got recon suite, I got evaluate. We both got evaluate fine, and then I got the cut apart too. So I had scored probably 6 points that first turn, and he had not. He only had 2 or 3. The Sicarians are decent models. They're not the best thing against my guys. They have the 3 up. They have the AP -3. That's nice. They only swing twice. These were regular Sicarians, and they only wound on 4s. So your odds that they're gonna actually get the kill, even against my scout guys, are not outstanding. And that is in fact what happened. They ended up splitting up One of them charged my Storm Shield, who'd moved forward onto the objective the second turn, and that was a really bad matchup for him because my Storm Shield guys got 3-up invuln save, so now you've got that on top of everything else. His other guy charged my leader and was not able to get the kill. I think he did get a flesh wound, but and that's on top of everything else. Then you got to make the injury roll. And I had death denied the second turn, which I believe I had to use to save my guy who was behind their line. So he, So my guy, I had to go first. I think I decided to fall back rather than stay in combat. And my thinking was that the shooty priest wasn't going to be able to shoot. That's right. Because if I fall, and I think what had happened is because of my movement and the order, I had not noticed that his melee electro priest actually was not in melee combat with me at the beginning. He was like a half inch out of it.
Oh,
so a little bit of it didn't end up being a big mistake, but I mean, it was maybe that would have changed my thinking on it. So I kind of left the shooty priest alone down here, kind of not in position to do to shoot, but like really, really far, and only if he didn't move, which I like. I was out here, and then he had to make a charge again. He did succeed on the charge. I think he did get the kill, and I used my death denied up there to keep that going. And then meanwhile, my flamer had charged up from this objective here to threaten his leader on the back objective, which was a great move, but he ended up being able to counter it. And I can't exactly remember how, but I basically just got bought. I think my flamer came up but didn't actually make a charge. When he fired his flamer, he didn't do anything to the leader. And then the next turn, somehow he was able to charge again with his electro priest and get that electro priest was just everywhere. And then he was swinging at the flamer, and then that's where my death denied was going. But the bottom line is none of these things he was doing was ever able to like kind of bring his score back, right? Because I think he held more than me the second, because I was a little bit focused on like closing in for the kill. But the Sicarians, although they were contesting both the objective, I still outnumbered him on one of them. And I still had some free bodies back here that were able to shoot at what they wanted to. I think I was not able to successfully take out the plasma guy, but I did put a flesh wound on him. He didn't. He might have flesh wounded the scout in return, or perhaps he might have even killed the scout. But that was the second turn, and then the third turn, I took advantage of his locked up Sicarian. Got more bodies onto him. I was able to kill one of them. Now I was holding more objectives again, and I already had a lead game. And so we ended the game on the third turn, and it would have been a pretty similar score to the round before. And ultimately, I was really happy with the way they bringing that relic blade and going for the recon sweep ended up being a really good one. Of course, he could have gotten lucky and perhaps killed with the electro priest, but that his odds weren't great of doing that, and so luckily that that went my way. I think it's safe to say that when you're playing with fewer models, if you have really bad luck, it can be pretty devastating early on. But I guess on the other hand, the Astra Militarum game, I mean, I lost those two critical models with bad rolls the first, and I was able to still come back. So the fair bit of resiliency in that Astartes team. So that's how that match went down. I think on the whole, my dice were a little better than his throughout the game. I mean, I can't remember all the detail. I mean, I know the flamer whiffed there, and then I never got another kill with the relic blade. But he was kind of there mostly to score those behind points and to kind of keep his army moving backwards, right? To not getting more pressure forward. Those two Sicarians were all the pressure he was able to go forward with, and they're not enough of a threat that they're like something I need to run from, right? They're a reasonable unit, but if I outnumber them, it's ultimately going to go my way, and that's how it went down.
Okay.
There you go. That was the fourth game.
Okay, in which case, before we go to the fifth, I have to ask, chess clocks.
Chess talks?
Chess clocks.
Oh, chess clocks.
How do you
Um,
feel about chess clocks?
well, I mean, they make the game a lot more stressful. I'll tell you that much.
Okay.
But, but my experience in Warhammer and in this is uh, games don't finish without them. And I know other people are like, oh no, I have no problem. Um, I will tell you when we put it, I mean, I'm probably not as fast a player as some people are. Um, but generally speaking, my opponents are just as by and large. And the one exception to that would be we didn't talk about Asuryani. Day one, Alec Berryman, that guy's a fast player.
Yes.
That dude is just a fast player, and he had, no problem, didn't need that chess clock. Generally speaking, when I'm on a chess clock, I am using less time than my opponent. And that's going back to big Warhammer, where they're generally more experienced with the chess clock than I am. Mm-hmm. So it's not like a chess clock use issue. It's just that I not only don't play super fast, but people do not play me super fast, even people who are normally a little bit faster. So if we're not going to have chess clocks, we're going to have some of these 3-round finishes, or we're going to need a little bit more time. Maybe the big clock on the or just some more guidance about where we're supposed to be. But I find that first turn takes a long time in every game. I'm certainly very right. I mean, I'm trying to orchestrate a plan that's going to come together, and I'm sure that my are doing a lot of the same, except for Alec. He just went for it. He just went for what I was doing.
Yeah. So generally, you're okay with chess clocks? You think they're probably a good thing, at least on the top table, presumably.
Yeah. I mean, I don't. I mean, again, they are stressful, but I think that they get games finishing on time, and I mean, people just need to get in the habit and use them. I think Sheldon doesn't like them, so I don't know if Alex likes them, so we might not see them. We might see some other alternatives, and that's fine. I think chess clocks are pretty unfriendly to beginners.
Yes, sure.
I think they're a little bit like the door rules that we've been playing with. I think the door rules that we've been playing with are great for two people who really understand them. They're just a neat addition to the game. But anytime you're playing with somebody who doesn't understand them, they're like a really annoying trap. And chess clocks are a little bit the same thing. Like if you're kind of a new player and you're not like a chess clock is going to really throw you off and kind of make you have less fun. But if you have two people who really know how to use chess clocks, I think they're going to make the game go, and you can kind of pick any amount of time you want to play, and just you're bound to that. So I can understand not wanting to use them, not wanting to scare away people, because we're growing this hobby. So that's probably a reasonable result, and I don't mind. I when I go into a game and we don't have a chess clock, I'm definitely keeping in mind that I better not fall behind and count on round 4 to win, because there may well not be a round 4. So I try to make sure I'm getting some points early, and I think if you're not doing that, then the chess clock, lack of finishing might bite you in the butt at the end of it. For some reason, my screen just dimmed. Oh, there you go. It's back.
You're still here.
Yeah, that's still here.
Quick technical question about the chess clock. Were you doing it every time? So let's say, obviously it's their turn, they charge. You flip the clock for you to roll your Overwatch, then you flip back, or were you doing that on their side?
I think you need to. The reason is sometimes people take a while to think about it, right? Okay. I mean, sometimes it's super fast, right? Like you'd think, okay, sure. I'm going to charge you, you roll Overwatch, and sometimes people are sitting there and they're like, do I use for the greater good? Do I, you know what I mean? Like that. And then they miss their Overwatch, or they hit, and then they miss the wound roll, and then they're like, do I want to use a command point? Very, very reasonably, right? Sure. And that's the reason you got to put that on I think every time you got to get in the habit of tapping that. And that's, that's how they do it in big 40K.
Okay.
But that takes it takes a little bit of practice, and I think everybody kind of forgets. I mean, I know in the 5th game with the manual, we would be talking about movement when he was moving, and there was a thought that maybe you should pause. Well, that's not normally. I mean, I guess you could, or maybe you decide whether you do that or not. But when if we talked on my side, we didn't do it too. Obviously, he had a lot of movement that was very finicky, and so that bogged us down. But we had one scoring phase where it ran on my time the whole time, and that's just you kind of just got to take that. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you forget, and I mean it's your responsibility to make sure your clock's not running when it's not supposed to be. So it does go both ways, and ultimately, he did not need more time than he had to finish that game. No. I mean, Sheldon ended up giving him more time, but he didn't need it. Like he first of all, he was going to win the game whether he had time or not, and second of all, he got his moves done and did everything in the minute 45 he had. Sure. So, I mean, I think, and another thing is when you sit down with somebody and you're playing with a chess clock, you got to ask them, how do you feel about the chess clock? And like Eric Utsikel hates them, and I know that. But
we saw that. We saw that live.
We played with the chess clock because we needed to. And Emmanuel told me that he was really comfortable with the chess clock.
Oh, okay.
And I think he understood the chess clock, and I think he knew how to use it. Okay. But that's I mean, there you go.
Okay. Not what he said in his interview, by the way.
Oh, fair enough. So did he say he did not know how to use it?
He said he'd never played with one before, I think, and he didn't like them. Yeah.
Fair enough.
There you go.
Well, he might not have said he liked them, but I mean, he definitely, like, he knew how to use it, or he was good with it.
Fair enough.
But, well, in any case, I think that the feeling is that we're not going to use chess clocks that much. I don't know. But,
I think that's all. I think top table, a chess clock makes a lot of sense, especially since you could just have it on your phone. It's an app. Very easy to learn how to use. That's what I intend to do at some point. When I'm next prepping for a tournament, I'm just going to have my phone placed on the, on the desk next to the mat. And just me and my opponent will just tap my phone. That flips it over to the other person's go.
And that's all there is to it.
Interesting addition, I think.
Well, and I'll tell you, Frontline Gaming has like a 5-page document on the chess clock and how to use it.
Right.
And it answers like every question. Like it addresses everything of like what if. I mean, they put a lot of work into that. So we should adopt that. I mean, if we're going to use chess clocks, just port that over and just make sure there's nothing that I think it all kind of makes sense because, like I said, you got to switch it over for Overwatch because spend a long time thinking about their Overwatch. And I think there is a little bit of a question when you're moving your orcs and you want to be like, exactly precise about what they are when you shoot. I think if you're trying to shoot and you're trying to prove that your guy can hit, that's on your time. You know what I mean? And if you're trying to move and you want to prove that you're not going to get or you want to prove that your charge that's super close is enough, that's kind of on your time, right? So that's, and I think that's how Frontline Gaming would say to handle it too. So it's something that they're doing. They're doing a lot of games with a lot of chess clocks. So we can definitely follow in their footsteps.
Makes sense. Okay, do you want to hit us with game number 5?
Game number 5. So orcs were something I said I wanted to play the whole time. The reason understanding of what an orc list was going to do or how it was going to play. I had played 2 practice games against orcs. One of them with a list of my own devising that was more hoardy than Emmanuel's, and then one with I think almost a joke list that Alex threw out on the orc faction board that involved like the orc Terminator, and then a lot of guys just supporting him. But I was like, well, I'd be interested to see what that kind of list looks like. So I played against that with my Asuryani, and then I played against a slightly hoardier orc list with my Astarte, and I think that kind of my downfall in the game was in not realizing that with that many orcs and that much, he was just bound to be able to charge me from somewhere I couldn't see. And so, maybe instead of putting the flamer on that center objective, who's going to be 10 inches away and kind of daring everybody to charge him, maybe I put the Stormbolter there. And then if he wants to make those 10-inch charges that are going to fail more often than not, I'm getting 4 Overwatch shots every time. I think the flamers need to be used a little bit different than I used them. And I think I really could have gotten some benefit out of a Relic Blade guy in that game. Pretty confident he was going to make a veteran move. He had a solid guy. Of course, I didn't know exactly what list he was going to bring until I saw it on the table. So, that's part of it too, right? But now knowing what he brought and seeing that is a good list, I think having a guy who's kind of available to countercharge would have been a powerful thing, especially because the first turn I'm going to have Death Denied because I'm not going to the orcs. And so the odds that I can kill one of those hard-hitting orcs before they can kill me are really high. Ultimately I kind of, by putting the 2 flamers out there, I took away a lot of my own shooting. Putting the one guy who's a far charge, that's a good strategy because some orcs are not going to make the charge. They get strung out, and then I can shoot them. And that's nice. But the other one was not. That was probably just not a good place for me to be. I had thought he could see all the orcs, but even if he could. What's he going to do? Maybe kill 1 orc on Overwatch? Maybe, you know what I mean? Like maybe one, like I'd get really lucky if I killed 1 and flesh wounded 1. Ultimately that's going to go down about like maybe with him having 1 less orc, right? So that was not a good play. That's a good play against Termagants and stuff like that. I was kind of putting orcs in the same category, but they hit a lot harder. I think that was poorly done. My heavy bolter guy had a decent game, as he always did. My plasma guy, who was in there kind of with the thinking that probably people bring 1 big dangerous orc, he really didn't get any action because the big dangerous orcs were always in melee. So I would have much rather he had been that Relic Blade, able to kind of face the orcs on their own. In that circumstance, I'd be able to, you need to push those orcs on morale. Right, that's how you're going to beat them, and they're very vulnerable to morale. They don't have any. Their gimmick to defeat it is pretty meager, right? Like you get to ignore the 6s on guys close to the big guys, but that's not going to help you with the 3s, 4s, and 5s that are failures. So that was it. I don't think I had after the first turn with the moves I made. I think my path to victory would only have been in getting some hot rolls, because I'd kind of just put myself in a tough spot. You know what I mean? I tried to make a game, score the engage on all fronts, top. I gave myself a chance to kind of have that miracle occur, if you will. He did drop in those 3 orcs, and I was able to line up a really nice shot with the heavy bolter on them. Did take 1 out, but I wasn't able to get the dangerous one. So there were dice that could have gone my way to allow me to win the game, but there were not like dice that I should have expected to win my game, if that makes sense, right? I was kind of like I was doing a variety of Hail Marys from right after the first turn. That was kind of what I was down to. So, and that's exactly the position I think I think that was exactly what happened to the Tau and the Admech guys, were just that first setup and like where we all move and how we respond didn't go great for them. And that's what happened to me against Emmanuel. It didn't go great for me turn. And then I was like, oh wow, I'm in a hole that I don't have a way out of. That's where you gotta more experience would have helped. So I've got some different ideas for the orcs, and I'm glad that I got to them in action, and probably should have paid. I would have also liked to have. I mean, it's hard to say, but I think I would have liked to have picked the other side of that map. The side I picked gave the orcs this a huge opportunity to kind of like be close to me, as close as they could be, but still behind cover. Whereas on my side, the cover was a little bit further back, which I think initially I was thinking power behind. I mean, that's not the path to victory. Hide behind cover and shoot from a long way against orcs that are going to be there pretty quick. There you go. I think that was not my best game of the day. Not my best game of the day.
Wow. The one you lost, shockingly, it wasn't the best game.
Yeah.
I
made mistakes in some of the other games too. I mean, against that Tau and stuff like that. But then, if you make mistakes and then you get some good dice, sometimes it saves you. I think that, I played the first game and the second game against Astra Militarum really, really well. I mean, in the Astra Militarum game, definitely overcame the dice to get that victory. The third game, I think the dice did it for me, because I think I did make some poor moves alongside some good moves. And I think the fourth move, I did have a really good overarching strategy that put me in a great spot. And then, I was able to ride that. But the fifth game did exactly the opposite. Kind of made a critical, just a strategic poor plan. My plan of implementation against it very quickly got exposed, and then I wasn't able to turn it around.
Okay, so a quick question about the orcs there. Was it the number of knobs he took that kind of threw you for his list? You were expecting just boys?
That would be what threw me. I was the orc list I tested again had it did have 2, and he had 3, and you wouldn't think that'd be the biggest difference. But the way that the deployment worked out, they were not all able to get into combat the first turn. I think that and so when I tested against, I had brought the cheaper knobs with 6-up saves. He brought the much more expensive knobs that only get 4-up saves, and I think that was worthwhile, because he made some 4-up saves, right? And 6-up saves would have been harder to make. He made some 6-up saves with regular orcs too, but that you're gonna make a couple. You shoot a lot of orcs.
Yeah.
So I think that was my list. Those knobs were easier to kill. And I did kill them at range before they were able to kind of lock things up and make it. And then that made me feel good about the maybe that more ranged intent. With 3 knobs, it was a different story. He just had guys, kind of changes the dynamic a little bit, and it was more threats. Because each of those knobs is a threat to every one of my units. I don't have any guys with storm shields or whatever. So only Death Denied is going to save me. And that's another thing, that the Horde of Orcs is great against Death Denied, because he charged me with 3 orcs and a knob. Like, you do the 3 orcs first. Well, if one of those orcs gets a kill, I can't use Death Denied. I mean, I can, but the knob's still there, right?
Yeah,
it's not going to do anything for it.
Yeah.
So instead, I was using it to reroll armor saves. And I think, the first orc that swung at the front flamer, 2 armor save fails in a row. But then his other orc knob failed to hit it all, so that was kind of balanced out. Just not enough good moves. I mean, I think my towards his objective was, obviously it was kind of a good move. It was the only move probably I had, and I think that definitely the guy. It was definitely smart to put a guy on that center objective and dare him to make the long charges.
Yeah.
And you're gonna fail a few. You're gonna have some guys to shoot at. If I'd maybe if I'd kept the other guy. Certainly, if I'd had a relic blade to get in there, I could have really made the game totally different than it was. But there you go.
Okay, fair enough. I do have 2 more questions on my list of questions for you that I've been jotting down. One of them is kind of related to this. So when it comes, it's kind of a dual question, related but also completely unrelated. Winning initiative. 2 things. One, just how did you notice a correlation between you winning/losing initiative and then winning/losing the game? Was that a big factor for you?
Well, no, and the reason we can say that is, I mean, I won initiative about half the
Okay.
time.
Okay.
All right. I went second against the Tau. That's nice. That was good.
Yeah.
I think I also went second against the AdMech. I think that was good in that game. I went first against the Asuryani. That wasn't outstanding.
Mm.
Most games you want to go second the first turn, I think, most of the time. Um, I think I did that about, I'll tell you that we didn't, I did not like their dice the whole
Right.
day. Um, I
Oh
don't think that I
yes.
got initiative going my way a single time with the Asuryani. Um, I might be remembering wrong, but I mean, I think at most I had one. I think I went first 4 times out of 5. Um,
Actually,
I still, I
me
still won
and
those games.
me and Alex were watching the casino dice very carefully. Um,
Yeah.
because day one, Birinid refused to use the red casino dice because he thought they were rolling terribly. So we were like,
Okay.
maybe he's right. And so we started paying real attention to how many ones and sixes the reds and the blues were rolling. And they were actually remarkably similar. Uh,
Yeah. What you
weirdly,
think?
weirdly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, for a moment. I think Birinid was right in his game. He rolled a lot of ones.
Yeah. Well, and
On
I
the
mean, of course, another thing is, I mean, it's just when the dice come, right? We
Yeah,
don't notice inconsequential bad or good rolls. We notice the critical
of
ones,
course.
and
Yeah.
so like with the Tau, I mean, there's probably plenty of things. The Tau, the first day with the Auxilary, I'm sure there's plenty of things that went right in that game. But, um, I mean, a critical move first roll, whatever, decisive move, that allowed him to completely block me on my side. I
Mm.
failed that roll. And then, man, I think seven flesh wounds on him, and I'd only taken one guy
Oof.
out of action, right?
Yeah.
So that's obviously, that's tough. But I'm sure that if you go back and you look closely at the game, you'll see plenty of other things that went my way.
Sure.
But I would say, on the whole, I felt like my Asuryani had average to poor dice, but they did with a couple exceptions. And I think my Astartes rolled pretty well on the whole. I mean, they rolled
Okay.
very well against Janus. We all saw on the stream. I think they rolled well against the Tau and the Admech on the whole. Probably not like overwhelmingly so, but it might have felt that way at the time, because I think that it happened early, and then the game's kind of going its way.
Yeah.
Um, and although I had a bad first round against the Astra Militarum, my dice probably came around by the end.
Sure.
So yeah, and it's, if you listen to Nick Nanavati and these guys, play this for money and are doing, at the top of the game. I mean, they all will tell you, as soon as you're talking about dice, you're kind of hurting yourself as
Sure.
soon as you start talking about dice, because you're never going to get better talking about dice. You got to always assume, and a big part of playing well is taking some of those critical rolls out of it, right? And it's only when you get into a bad spot, I mean, I had, that's kind of how you push the game. I mean, once Emmanuel, I kind of has strategy and had gone well, he didn't need good dice the rest of that game. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like he was on track to win. I needed good dice to turn that around, right? And I think that to a certain extent, the same thing had happened in the Janus, the Tau, and the game, where after the first turn kind of went off and went my way, I mean, now they're the ones who are going to need to start praying for dice, because I can kind of probably deal with good,
Average
bad, or
dice.
indifferent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as long as it's not like, I mean, every now and then you just have these dreadful. But I mean, I don't know. I've really never had a game where I'm like, wow, the dice were so bad there was nothing I could do. It's never
Okay.
been a factor. But I mean,
No.
yeah.
I suppose this doesn't really change anything fundamentally. But do you think we should start playing that whoever rolls highest can choose who goes first or second?
Oh, I mean, I don't. Yeah.
It's just weird you can't, right? I mean, it doesn't actually change anything. Either you win or lose the roll off, just like you would originally.
You like it, I guess. I mean, just it's I mean, yeah. As long as everybody understands what's going to happen,
Yeah.
it's all good. At this point, I would oppose that change because I think it's going to be confusion, and a lot of people are going to be like, "Wait, you rolled higher. You have to go first." And you're like, "No, we changed the rule for this one." And I'm like, "Wait, I didn't know that. I would have rolled different."
Yeah, I'd have rolled lower.
Yeah. I mean, if I'd known I needed to roll a 6, I would have rolled a 6.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's probably not worth us putting too much thought into.
No. Okay. And I suppose the final thing are I've written here thoughts on terrain rules, and I've forgotten what I meant by that. So I'm just going to kind of off the cuff make a question up. I don't know what I'm asking really. You were definitely talking about terrain being a big fact. Oh, yes. So you mentioned that you had. I think it was against the Tau. You had like 2 bits of line of sight blocking terrain.
Yeah, that's right.
And that turned out to be absolutely critical for you. How do you feel? Yes. So do you think there should be some? This isn't necessarily for competitive, but kind of also for competitive. Do you think there should be some sort of rules or a system for the most optimum board setup? You know, so
I do kind of. I'll tell you one thing I loved about. I mean, of course, here's what the board's going to look like. You were going to set it up this way.
Yeah.
Now, if I had been there, I would have probably realized that there wasn't much line of sight blocking. I did it, but there was some. There was some around the big building. As I told you before, I constructed my own Lego terrain to match the outlines, and my Lego terrain had a good amount of line of sight blocking, and I think it was perfect.
Yes.
I think it's important that there be a decent amount of line of sight blocking terrain. It makes the best game. That being said, I faced Tau and Plasma Spam twice against maps that did not have a whole lot of line of sight blocking terrain, you know, where there wasn't like a big obvious place to hide. Because on the one with the landing pad in the center, if you got your guy up to a high enough elevation on the stairs, you could see everything on the whole board. And on the other one, which I played Alex and the Tau both on that same map. Like you could just see it through that building almost every way. And yet, even as I say that, then occasionally you would start getting used to being able to see anything across the building, and then you'd try and you'd be like, oh, I'll be damned, I actually can't see that one little thing. So it was kind of interesting. It was unpredictable, the line of sight. It worked out. I mean, it was good games. I think the terrain was cool, and the ability to move up and down. I was playing a list that wanted to avoid getting shot against a lot of really good shooting armies, so I would have loved to have seen a little bit more.
Yeah, sure.
But whatever. That's self-interest, right? That's not necessarily. Maybe they would say exactly the opposite.
Yeah, they just want an open field. Yeah.
Right.
Terrain's a negative.
I think that there was a pretty good amount of line of sight terrain on the final map I had against the Orcs, and I did not.
There was a lot.
Take good.
Yeah.
Was that?
There was a lot of line of sight blocking terrain, a lot of big mountains. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the right amount in general for a game. And unfortunately, I brought the shooting list when I didn't even have to in that case. Well,
yeah.
So it goes. So yeah. And as far as getting more terrain more interesting or to do weird things, I kind of think that might be cool. Sheldon put out some sample missions, and some of them had like little buffs and stuff. Like if you stand on the center objective, you're not going to get penalties for long range shooting. If those are done right, I think they're great. I think the things where that's not so good. I mean,
could you repeat that? Sorry, you cut out.
Sure. Sheldon had put out some like environment rules for the maps he made in his mission pack for the big invitational next year. And I thought that some of them were really cool. I mean, I thought that about half of them were just right. I did not like the ones where there was like roll a d6, and on a 6 something great happens, on a 1 something terrible happens, because that's just going to kind of like, if you have 30 games going on, as well, I don't know if we ever did, but if you in the future, if we have 30 games going on, somebody is just going to have this ridiculous game that's just destroyed the first turn because they rolled a bunch of ones on those, and that's no good.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the one where you had to move to the center, and then you could ignore long range shooting. I mean, that's kind of cool because once you're in the center, there's not that much long range shooting anyway, and if you're a shooter, you don't usually want to be in the center, so it's kind of it balanced the cost and the benefit pretty well. And I think some other such things could be made that would make it interesting. But as we all know, you're doing custom missions because you can quickly throw things into a random area, and once things are too random, you're going to hurt competitive play.
Definitely.
Right.
Okay.
What time is it over there? It's got to be midnight. Not quite.
11:30. 11:30. So not too bad.
I don't even know what time that is. That's the time we don't even.
Well, yeah. No, I'm ready to wrap up. I think we've covered everything. Was there anything else you wanted to say? Anything about Astartes or Asuryani, or maybe you're considering another faction?
Well, I don't know if I'll have time to. Sisters come out. I want to look at Sisters.
Yeah. Sure.
I'll probably buy some of those models for sure. This is like a side project, but I'm kind of envisioning making a big Astartes army, and my lore idea is that my Astartes army is actually a renegade chapter of kind of freedom fighters, like fighting on behalf of the people of the Imperium. And it's a combination, although they'd use Astartes rules, it'll be a combination of Sisters and Astartes, with kind of like maybe like a Mockingjay or a Joan of Arc type figurehead who's like the leader of this movement. So that was like my concept for the army. So to like that end,
Saint Celestine is the leader, sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess that's right. Yeah, or just some. I mean, it can't be Celestine because Celestine's like an important person who works for the Empire, but the Imperium. But there's like somebody who's like thinks the Imperium and is recruiting Space Marines. Disaffected Space Marines to her cause, right? Because if you look at a lot of the Chaos chapters, they sort of start by, being left to die by the Imperium, or sent into some suicidal situation, or just being cut off from supply lines, and that's how they become renegades. And so she's kind of finding some of these, and instead of letting them naturally devolve to chaos as their corrupt gene makes them prone to do, she's giving them a something to fight for.
Okay.
For the common man of the Imperium. There you go. So anyway, I'll buy some Sisters, and then if I buy them, I'm going to be in a position to put together a Sister skill team. But that doesn't look like that'll happen before LVO, just because of the way the models are coming out, and I don't know where the rules are coming out. I don't know.
Nobody knows. So we'll see.
Yeah. But and then we'll see what the results are. Wouldn't be hard to switch to Custodes, right?
Hey, yeah, 3 models and you're done.
So, if I find that the rules are skewed to make that a good play, then I might consider it. At this point I'm in first, so I'm going to go probably into LVO with the intention that I want to play to win. I used the second day at SoCal kind of as a, I'd won the first day, so I was just like, hey, I'm just going to see what it's doing. Maybe they're going to, maybe I'm only going to win 2 games or whatever. But I think that they got something to show, and ultimately they really outperformed my expectations, and that was awesome. But I'll probably be playing what I think is going to have the best chance of going the distance at LVO. Okay. Because I think Eric's going to be there with what he thinks is going to go the distance, and I think some of those guys from SoCal are going to be there with the same mentality, and then there's going to, George is going to bring something he thinks is going to win. Well, he's not going to be at LVO, but people like George. There's going to be more guys like that. People we haven't heard of yet. We're going to show up. They're going to see these videos. They're going to read these articles, and they're going to get excited about Kill Team, and they're. And you never know if we're going to start getting people, probably not at LVO, but, we might start getting some more players who are notable in Big 40K who want to take a break or do something different. So,
well, we can only hope. Yeah.
Those guys might have ideas the rest of us hadn't had yet.
Yeah. Okay. I have one final question that I should have asked much earlier.
Oh, good.
Would you rather play At 100 or 125 points?
I think I like 100 points a little bit better.
Okay.
The 125 was fun for Astartes, but it was not fun for Asuryani as much. And I feel like we need to standardize it, and I think 100 points is pretty good. So I'm just kind of throwing my hat in the ring on that. Not there was anything right. It was cool to do something different with 125, but I kind of saw that as it didn't ruin the game in any way. It didn't some factions did better, some factions did worse. We saw some good diversity, but we want to have a standard for the game, and I think 100 points is going to be it.
Did you see that Alex Kill Team Academy has done a little poll, a straw poll on it?
I have not. So we've got okay, fair enough. We did a poll before with Sheldon, but I will.
Oh, well,
look for the poll.
I think he's got over 150 answers. I think it's like 180 answers. So that's a good amount. Can you guess what people are saying? And like what the divide is?
Well, I mean, the last poll, my recollection was that 100 and that 150 was way back. I mean, I guess I'd say that maybe pretty close to that same result. What's the answer?
75% of people want to play 125.
Okay. So it's actually become even more popular.
Bizarrely, yeah. I mean, obviously he's asking everywhere. He's not just asking the Discord. He's not just asking for competitive. He's just saying in general. But pretty telling, yeah.
Well, there you go. Then we might have. I mean, we've seen Brant now comment. So now that we have a with the man, we know that he's pretty reasonable about these things. But he definitely likes 100. And he's got a fair bit of influence. And I know that after Sheldon went and met with him and talked presumably with him face to face, he kind of came around to the 100. So he might have some pretty good. He might have some good reasons for it.
Quite possibly. Okay, well, if you do you have anything you want to plug this time?
So I'm going to be reading some of what it's all about, and I'm loving seeing more Kill Team comments or content being put out. Right, I'm looking forward to us one day having a podcast kind of like Nick Nanavati's or for Big 40K, or even like Pablo's Chapter Tech, where we kind of regularly get on and discuss small details of the with a competitive focus. So one day.
Well, I believe Pyramid is working on something, but I mean that's for him to say.
Yeah. So there you go. We might have such a, because I think I've heard that Suki's got this thing, but I think it's more.
It's a bit more casual.
It was more casual when I listened to it a couple of times. So yeah, I'd love to just people really go into the details and kind of like try to help everybody get a little bit better and grow the game that way.
Definitely. I mean, it's something I'd love to do, but it's not something you can do as a single person. You need at least two, preferably more. I think kind of the round table podcasts are a better format.
Yeah, well, I think you need like a host.
Yeah.
And then kind of a subject matter expert, sure. as a bare minimum for you two, and then maybe a color guy as a third might be. Sometimes people might be able to do two of those things. But you're right. I think as a single person, it's not quite as good as if you have two, and then you can have guests come on.
Yeah.
To deliver specific expertise in some instances.
No, definitely. Otherwise, I'd be doing it already. But
all right. Well, no, there you go. You just got to find the right partners.
I don't like people, so
Yeah, no, I totally understand.
Yeah.
Totally not. I love people.
well, that's anyway.
But I completely understand your position.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to say goodbye to the viewers?
Say goodbye. See you later, guys.
Thank you very much for watching, everybody. This has been Glass Half Dead and Michael T. Holy. Yes, you have to say his entire name whenever you speak of him. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've had a good day, and I hope you continue to have a good day. Goodbye.